Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
This is not a drill.
Repeat, this is not a drill.
What's going on, man? How's it going? Can you see me okay?
What up? Oh, for sure. In my dreams, I walk free in the city streets. 2,500 days plus 50 weeks. Doing hard time for these WikiLeaks. Trying to bring the truth out, man, it only gets you weak. And then they gag you. You don't get to speak. And when you get the leak, they try to hit the leak. The masses of the masses, they want this shit to street. That's why my middle finger's up to these sick elites. Playing on the regular.
You keep the messenger.
Free speech is the freedom of press. Take your deepest, darkest secrets, never leave them unsaid. If I'm a thief, then I'm a thief for the people you dread. The people want the red, while the blue you keep them in bed. Seeking the sheep, keep them asleep, deceiving the weak. Keep seeking the leech till you cease, and I see your defeat. Until I'm deceased underneath a freeze a red sheep. Become a dead man, then I hit the switch and release. When Goldman Sachs is your creditor.
You keep the messenger.
And outside my window a figure quickly creeps. They dark as night like some motherfucking chimney sweeps. Whiskey what my Mickey keeps. Dying in my kidneys weak. Silence of my risky tweets. What the grand jury seeks. I'm wanting peace like 7 years in Tibet. Now rest in peace like 7 years under threat. Cause I released 7 vaults. They upset. They ended the rape sentence. But the US still insists to rest. I guess it's a sin to take the truth and disseminate. MLK to Gandhi. Take him and eliminate. And I don't say I'm great. Just wanna say what's fake. But if they kill me, a million others will take my place. The CIA's post like a knife the sharpest. All hypocrisy, lies, and heartless. They want to stop me, my life, make my heart quit. Cause democracy dies in the darkness. Cause democracy dies in the darkness. You kill the messenger.
You kill the messenger.
Democracy dies in the darkness.
Darkness.
Hi everybody, I'm hoping I've set everything up correctly, and I have. I'm on form today. Right, so the state of the play at the moment with Brexit. We have to talk about this. I need to get into it because honestly right now it's an absolute clown show down there in Westminster. It's insane. I am starting to call it the theatre of the morally unclean, since there seems to be nobody with any morals down there. All 650 of them at the moment are definitely morally bereft. We've got Prime Minister Boris Johnson right now, who was elected, remember, by about 100,000, I would say probably affluent people, mostly male, definitely. And he's sitting there in Parliament. Now get this, he's sitting there in Parliament and he lost the vote last night and he's lost the football basically. The other side's got the ball and they're going to take it to the EU and they're going to try and stop Brexit. That's the state of play at the moment as it stands. But that was from last night. So Boris Johnson, who's been elected by about 100,000 rich people, is now leader of a minority government that has a majority of minus 43. Okay, he's just taken away 21 whips. He's took away 21 whips of the people who voted against him from the Conservatives last night, left him with 43 seats short of a majority. Can you imagine what other presidents around the world are saying about that? Can you imagine what Putin is saying about that? Or Assad? You know, after Boris Johnson and the government, Boris Johnson was Gavin Williamson telling him to shut up and go home, you know, and saying, oh, Putin's elections is a scam and Assad's elections is a scam. What about Iran? What about, you know, what Iran are thinking about this? This, beacon of democracy. And that brings me to the other one, Venezuela. Venezuela. Do you know when Chavez died, do you know what happened? They had a vote. They had a vote. Yeah. They had a vote. They are all registered to vote in Venezuela as well. All of them. I have to keep checking. Seriously, every year I get a card through. Oh yeah, I've got to make sure I check it. I'm still there. Oh, thank God. And if you move house, hey, it's awful. I have to keep checking. President Carter called Venezuela's elections unriggable. Basically one of the best in the world. And everybody there is registered to vote. It's in their constitution. Is it in your constitution that you have the right to vote? Have you even got a constitution, a written constitution? You know? And obviously because the right to vote is in their constitution, then of course they make it easy for them to vote and to prove who they are, even down to fingerprints. So you can imagine, can't you, that Maduro is looking at this. After Boris Johnson, let me say this, Boris Johnson, there's my little friend, Boris Johnson, he is there and he's in the House of Commons and he's calling Maduro a dictator. The other week, a few months ago rather, calling Maduro a dictator and saying Venezuelan elections are a sham, acting like a dictator. And Bojo is there and he's elected by 100,000 rich people and he presides over a minority government that has a majority of minus 43. And he has just, before I came on air, he has just called for an election that the leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, who has been begging for an election for 2 years, has said, nah, we're not going to go along with that. It's insane. It's a clown show. It's the theatre of the morally unclean. And here to talk to me about it is my friend from the United States, who is also, well, presiding and has his own channel talking about the absolute clown show that's American politics. Thanks very much for joining me, mate. Jamal Thomas of the Progressive Soapbox. Say hello to everybody, Jamal.
What's going on, man? How's it going?
Oh, it's these are strange times, Jamal.
Yes, they are. I love it. I like I said, some of the most elegant, cutthroat politics have been taking place in the UK, and there is nothing like it. And there's no comparison. Like there's nothing in the US where Parliament, the governing body, the Prime Minister goes to the Queen, a woman who was put there by God to rule over the world, in the UK particularly, to get her permission to suspend government, the aspect that is supposed to represent the country. Now, here's the thing. Nothing in that is illegal. That's the beauty of that. He's going to the Queen. There's nothing illegal.
Yeah.
Now, Parliament, of course, is going to bristle at that, like, how dare you? In which case, Parliament is going to say, yeah, we don't like you doing that. And they're going to take some feelings about him doing that, in which case you knew what was going to happen. Like when Parliament, like what did he think Parliament was going to do?
Well, here's the thing, right? What have you heard over there about this shutdown? What have you heard? That he shut down things for 5 weeks? Is that what you've heard?
Well, what I heard, I follow it closer than in the U.S. And typically they don't follow British politics in the U.S. But my understanding of it is that for the most part, Boris Johnson, you guys are supposed to leave on October 31st.
Yeah.
Boris Johnson has staked every ounce of his political capital on leaving on October 31st. And he goes to the Queen and says, I would like to suspend Parliament until the 14th of October.
Wrong.
Go for it.
Right, okay. I looked into it and I thought this is ridiculous. You don't prorogue Parliament for 5 weeks, and you don't. There's already a break, Jamal. There's already a recess booked for between the 12th of September or the 8th until the 8th of October. We've already got a recess. Parliament's already going to be shut down for that amount of time. What he's done is prorogue Parliament just before that recess, so he bookends it. Now, it works out between 3 and 8 days is all extra. That's all extra Parliament is going to be shut down on. Just 3 to 8 days. It was already going to be shut down for that recess. We have our party conferences over here, the Labour Party conference, Conservatives. Nothing happens in Parliament at all. Yeah. So he's closed down Parliament and he's just bookended it. And the other side have said, oh, he's closed down Parliament for 5 weeks. No, he hasn't. He's actually done something. Yes, proroguing Parliament right now is a really, he's trying to force the hand of the EU, isn't he? He's trying to babble. We'll talk about this in a minute. But
ultimately, he's trying to put pressure on Parliament to say, I want you to accept what I put out. Yeah. I mean, I didn't take it as, see, I look at this a little bit differently than I think most. I look at this as Boris Johnson got in office with the notion of, I am going to push through Brexit. He has no brick to push through Brexit with the Parliament because he has Theresa May's Parliament. And the only thing that he has is this notion that the European Union doesn't want Britain to fall out in this kind of helter-skelter Brexit. So that's the brick that he uses. My thing is, it freaks the public out. The public, oh my God, he's trying to have a no-deal Brexit. But that's all he has. Yeah. Like if Boris Johnson has a point. Like multiple things are true. This is why I love British politics. Multiple things are true at once. If Boris Johnson, in his standpoint, he's like, look, if I stab myself in the arm, I would eventually hit the European Union. And they don't want that. Meaning, like, I have to injure us in order to injure them. Now, he knows that, but he can't say that because the public also knows that that level of threat, that level of brinksmanship could end you out in a no-deal Brexit. It's this weird thing of, it's like, in order to get a deal, you have to be able to threaten a no-deal Brexit. And there's no situation where you can walk out of a negotiation where you say there's no chance for me to walk out of a negotiation. That's weird. Yeah, but Corbyn knows that. Corbyn doesn't care about that. Corbyn's job is to take power. And you wrap up the prime minister in knots in order to do that. But then you have this weird thing where Corbyn is like, yeah, I don't know if I want a general election. I'm like, get out of here.
I went round my mum's last night. And she was like, he's going to stop no-deal Brexit. And I'd come from an area that voted 2-1 to leave, and she's an older lady. She wants to leave the EU. Anyway, she called me a Judas when she found out I voted Remain. And I went round there and I said, you've been watching Brexit? She looked at me and she went, Corbyn, bloody turncoat, isn't he? And honestly, if my mom's saying that, honestly, she's the sweetest old lady you're ever going to meet. If my mom's saying that, you can bet your ass in living rooms all around the country, especially in the Midlands and the North, people are saying that too. He has shot himself in the foot massively, Corbyn. Yes, I don't want to talk about Corbyn. I'll come to Corbyn in just a second, right? In just a second. But I wanted to
I agree with you. This fence-sitting stuff doesn't fly. Yeah. I've seen polling on it.
So we'll come to him in a minute, but I want to talk about Boris Johnson because, like I say, he has just bookended an already there on the books recess for... Yeah. And I want to make sure that everybody's clear of that because when I did the video, people were like, shit, loads of people were like, hold on a minute, we were told it was 5 weeks by the BBC and what have you. But the way they things, how Jimmy Dore says all the information's there in the New York Times, you've just got to hold it up to the light and slant it at the right side. You had to read the article and sort of get bits from 2 different questions that people have asked to cobble together, hold on a minute, he's shut it down for what looks like an extra 7 days. And to put somebody like me, that's an extra 7 days for them not to sort out Brexit. Because let's face it, they've had 3 years. Now, what I want to talk to you about is the way, first of all, with Boris Johnson, how they've basically took this away from him. They've took the football away from him. They've took the diary away from him.
Yep.
And the reason they've done it, it's insane. The reason they've done it is because they want to take no deal off the table. Now, this is alludes to what you were touching on there, which is why I want to get into this. I've likened this to taking no deal off the table. I've likened this to going to the World Series of Poker and trying to win it by playing only 4 cards at a time. Because without that extra card, you haven't got the bargaining chip. You haven't got the...
It makes 0 sense in those terms. Like, it only makes sense in it. Look, it's like I've said it in these terms. Like Jeremy Corbyn says, he gets what he wants. He takes no deal off the table, and he becomes prime minister. And he goes to the European Union, and they said the only deal we're going to give you is Theresa May's deal. take it or leave it. At this point, what does he do?
But he's took no deal off the table. So,
but right. So what do you do? How do you take the deal that they've literally shut down 3 times? Meaning Parliament has voted this deal down 3 times, and the European Union said that's the only deal I'm going to give you. But you've constitutionally, legally, by law, taken it off the table. It makes 0 sense. It only makes sense in terms of tying up Boris Johnson in order to collapse the government.
Right. You mentioned Theresa May's deal there. What about this for an accident that happened? Have you heard about this accident that happened tonight in the House of Commons? Right. I'm going to have to get a video of this, but it happened. I watched it live, and then I went over to Twitter, and I thought, has this really happened? And sure enough, Laura Kunsberg, the BBC political editor, is tweeting it out. Now, I'm just going to... My computer might slow down here, people, so we'll just...
Go for it. You're breaking news. You're breaking news. I love it.
This is... Honestly, this is like... Come on.
That's
too much of a coincidence, you know?
But look at this.
Look at this. I'm going to show this on the screen now, Jamal, to people.
Okay.
Let me image slideshow.
You got to admit, though, it is beautiful politics. I mean, from the standpoint of cutthroat politics in regards to how Jeremy Corbyn is, like, because he's, they've gone with this thing of, okay, we're going to work with the government if they want to, but here are metrics, and the metrics were designed to not accept anything that they gave. And now Theresa May goes out.
Right, okay.
And what's his name comes in? And Jeremy Corbyn, for 3 years, has said, I want an election, I want an election, I want an election. And everything that he's done has been for an election. And even this taking no deal off the table, when he knows Boris Johnson can't do that, and the Conservatives can't do that, because from their standpoint, they have said, we're going to leave. Meaning that Boris Johnson is stuck in a situation that is untenable for him. He has no choice but to call a general election. Corbyn gets what he wants. And then Corbyn says, I don't know.
You said you brought up Theresa May's knee. I'm going to read this tweet. I'm going to read this tweet by Laura Kunsberg, the BBC's political editor. It says, it looks like the Kinnock, this is Stephen Kinnock, the Labour MP, son of Neil Kinnock, the Blairite. It looks like the Kinnock amendment to put Theresa May's deal back to the Commons for another vote, right, just went through by mistake. Things are getting very, very, very odd around here. So Stephen Kinnock. Listen, Stephen, at the beginning.
That again.
Right, Stephen Kinnock.
By mistake.
Stephen Kinnock
made deal.
When this vote was happening, Stephen Kinnock had wanted to put forward. Can we put Theresa May's deal forward, by the way, and just make sure that everybody's not, doing a Stephen Kinnock sort of thing. But the thing is, they say, okay, Stephen Kinnock amendment, those to the left say aye, and Stephen Kinnock went aye, and those to the right say nay, and everybody else was just like worrying about Brexit or some other votes, and it fucking went through. There's going to be another vote by the look of it. Theresa May's dead parrot is going to come back in some form. I swear it's going to happen. This is madness. This is utter madness.
Burkow has forbade that.
Well,
Burkow has forbade
Stephen
that.
Kinnock put it forward. Stephen Kinnock put it forward. He shouted, yay. Nobody said nay. So it's going to have to come forward. That is protocol from what the House of Parliament are like for their traditions and what have you. So we'll see on that tomorrow. But don't you think it's weird that was the one? Honestly, there were all sorts of other things, and everybody was like, hey, no. And it was put in the middle, sort of, some that went through uncontested. Don't you think that's a little bit weird?
That's so bizarre. Theresa May's deal was voted down in historic measure. They hated that deal. I mean, when she was negotiating that deal, I always thought it was so bizarre because I was like, how are you negotiating a deal with the EU without making sure Parliament is going to be okay with the deal? And then she took this perspective like it's Parliament's job to just okay it, and gotten pissed off over and over again in Parliament, like Parliament's not doing its job because it's not okay in this deal that it absolutely and entirely hates. And now, if they tell Parliament, you have to go and push forward, not leave without a deal. The EU, I don't know why they think the EU is a fair arbiter in this process, can just say, look, we're not negotiating. We told you we weren't going to negotiate. You got to accept Theresa May's deal or kick rocks.
And the EU obviously have every reason to play hardball here because they don't
Yeah.
want other countries getting wind of this. Holland and France and Italy and what have you, and saying, "Oh fuck this, UK went, we're going too." It's going to crash the ECB and the euro. I mean, some
Yes.
say that us leaving is going to crash it anyway. Perhaps that's a fucking good thing.
Well, here's the thing, and I think what they're concerned about is an uncontrolled exit, meaning if the UK leaves in this kind of helter-skelter, drunk man off of a cliff, Brexit, even if it's just brinksmanship. But if they leave, because they're saying that the negotiations are a shamble. And my argument is, no, the negotiations are not a shamble. The negotiation is the no-deal Brexit because they know that if the UK leaves in an uncontrolled way, it could have adverse consequences that are unforeseen from the standpoint of an economic condition of the European Union. They don't want that. They don't want that. Boris knows they don't want that. And he's using that as a weapon.
Yeah,
Catch is the country's not going to allow him to do it.
And at the same time, the EU, of course, weaponising this backstop. I mean, I've likened it to the ice wall in Game of Thrones because they've slammed it in the Irish Sea and basically said, "Oh, this cannot be removed. You cannot get through it. It's absolutely impossible." And I keep saying, well, just like the ice wall in Game of Thrones, it's fucking fictitious. Just take it out and figure another fucking way around it, for Christ's sake. And they're like, "No, you'll have to have a border." And Boris Johnson's like, "No, we don't. We're not going to put a border up." And they're like, "Well, it has to be a border." And we're like, "Well, you put a border up then." And, "Oh, we can't do that." It's like, it's preposterous. For fuck's sake, get some adults in the room. This is all I'm thinking.
Europe has no reason. You're right, by the way. That's the cynical interpretation, but it is the correct interpretation. The EU has zero reason to do anything to assist Britain in this process. And if Britain is going to pass some rule that says no deal is off the table, that you can never walk from the negotiation, I find that utterly preposterous. Again, preposterous from the standpoint of negotiations, but not from the standpoint of trying to collapse the government.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I mean. Like, this level of cutthroat politics. They think Jeremy Corbyn is this kind of just lefty who's not paying attention. He is involved and engaged in trying to win.
Is he?
The EU will look at this and say, great, I will give you the same deal that you get Theresa May. And that literally whether they realize it or not, that's the law eating itself. They have no propensity to accept Theresa May's deal. By the same token, the EU just said you must accept Theresa May's deal, and yet you can't walk from the negotiations. Like, certainly they have to realize this is an untenable position to put the prime minister in. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. So the EU is going to sit back and they're going to say, yeah, we're going to give you the exact same deal. They're not fair arbiters, nor should they be, because they don't want other people to leave. Look at all of the Eurosceptic governments. Italy is a Eurosceptic government. Poland is a Eurosceptic government. Like, these governments have started to grow up. You have the Yellow Vest movement that they've been trying to pretend doesn't exist for 6 months, in mainstream media, who some elements are calling Frexit. They don't want, this is a cascading issue that they want to punish Britain for. I agree with you.
If there is an argument to say that our media is not the fourth estate and they're only there to serve their own self-serving interests, then it's that. They're not talking about Frexit, about Yellow Vest, because they don't want to rock the boat. The reason they don't want to rock the boat, they're in the fucking boat, So you brought up Jeremy Corbyn here. Now, oh man, I've been losing subscribers recently, last few days, because I've actually been very, very hard on Jeremy Corbyn. And the reason I'm very hard on Jeremy Corbyn, of course, is because I'm extremely disappointed by him. Not disappointed by Boris Johnson. I've expected this from Boris Johnson. What's happened this year,
now, what's your issue with Corbyn? Because I think your issue with Corbyn is my issue with Corbyn also. But what's your issue with Corbyn?
My issue with Corbyn is this. He is acting like he's controlled opposition. He's acting like he's arguing all the wrong things, and he's capitulating on all the things that if he stood up, that he would win. Now, if we get an election now, right, and we are going to get an election, Jamal, we're going to try and stop this. Listen, when I was on your show last... Actually, when I was on your show, I think I said to you, I think it might have been the first time I was on your show, actually. And I only started my channel back then. But you'll remember that I said, my stance has always been the same on Brexit. You cannot have an in-out referendum without first defining what out is. I said this before the result of the last referendum. The day before, I voted Remain for that reason. I would vote out if they defined it and gave me a definite, but they didn't. And I said, you cannot have an in-out referendum without defining what out is, because if you do that and we vote out, you have left the door ajar for the establishment, the powers that be, the elites who don't want Brexit. Remember, they linked arm in arm and told us don't do it. You're leaving the door slightly ajar for them to wrap Brexit up in bureaucratic red tape, and we will end up having at least another referendum, possibly 2 or 3. And now I distinctly remember saying this on your show, and you said, what do you think will happen? And I said, this is the first time I came on your show, I said, there will be another referendum. I've said this all along. If we voted out, because we didn't define out, there'll be another referendum, and it will probably be in the form of another election, And I remember saying that to you on the show. Do you remember me saying that?
Vaguely, maybe.
Trust me.
Honestly, I don't.
I said it.
You probably did.
And here's my prediction.
I don't,
my prediction is we will get an election now. I think, honestly, it's so preposterous, Jamal. He needs a 2/3 majority to get the election, right? He might fail at that. And because if he loses a vote of no confidence, he only needs half. He only needs half to get an election from a vote of no. He might even call a vote of no confidence on himself.
On himself. Isn't that awesome? Come on, tell me. On some level, you have to accept the politics here is phenomenal. Like just the weird positions that people need to go through in order to get from point A to point B in regards to what they want. The prime minister saying, all right, I'm going to call a no confidence vote on myself. Oh, God, that's embarrassing. The indignity of that. They had no choice but to get to this point. How? Because nobody knew what Brexit meant. Nobody knew what Brexit meant. And so Boris Johnson is like, well, fine, I'm going to try to take us out. Now, Corbyn's thing.
You say nobody. The people did. Just to caveat there, because I know people in my chat will just go nuts there. I knew what it was. Some people did, but a lot of people didn't.
That's fair.
Okay, all right, carry on.
My issue with Corbyn was more so the fence sitting. It's like, if you have a referendum, you got to stick with the tenets of the referendum.
Yeah.
If the people say you leave, you can't call yourself a democratic system and not leave. Just kind of is what it is. If your country, we're democracy, we're democratic order, et cetera, great. Even if you say you were constitutional monarch democracy, whatever, and you say we're going to have a referendum and you get the largest vote tally in the history of the country to come out and say we are leaving, and then the country turns around and not do that, that's a problem. And I understand some people are like, well, Brexit is going to be this, Brexit is going to be that. Fair enough, but the country said leave. It's, for me, it boils down to that. And they said, well, dude, sometimes people change their minds, but you never had the opportunity to actually implement what it is.
Yeah.
If you're a constitutional democracy, it's fair enough, then you need to follow the tenets of that particular referendum. And I find it problematic to ignore that. And I think Corbyn will be punished if he tries to do something where he's pulling back on that. And it sounds like he's fence sitting on this. And I think that's a problem. I think he's going to be hurt by that.
It's even worse at the moment because now he's coming out and actively campaigning to stop Brexit and campaigning to remain. And he's losing support in the Midlands and North, support that he needs to hold on to actually win an election against Boris Johnson, which we are going to have. It's certain, almost. You never know. You can never say definite. But he's going to lose support in the Midlands of the North that he desperately needs. He's lost that already. And not only that, Jamal, I saw 87.5% of all the battleground states, you call them over here, but the battleground constituencies, the ones that he targets to win, to get his majority in the next election. Guess which way they voted for? 87.5% of them in the referendum. They voted to leave.
Yeah.
So he's screwed. He's he's shooting himself in the foot at every turn. And I'm like, why are you doing this? You've turned into dog shit this year. You were doing so well. When he was going away at Boris Johnson today, it was like, come on, please. And Dominic Raab, the foreign secretary, stood up yesterday and I was like, come on, start mentioning it. Now your gloves are off, take the gloves off. But he keeps battering around, you know. Take the gloves off. Bang! Syria. Bang! Was it a false flag? Bang! OPCW report, you know? And then they bat away that question. Bang! What about Venezuela? You're going to give them their gold back to Dominic Raab and all this. And then it was like, Boris Johnson, okay, right, take the gloves off. Bang! Russiagate. Mifsud. You were pictured with Mifsud. Come on. Yeah, honestly, you can imagine the only thing. This is right-wing nationalism that we are seeing over here. Correct? You are seeing Boris Johnson over here, the same as Trump. You might as well tape his hair. Correct?
Well, I always say that you guys are a slight lighter than us. You know, it's like we're your darker brother. Like,
Jamal,
you know,
what is the only thing? Jamal, what is the only thing that will beat right populism in the current climate? What is the only thing that will beat right-wing populism in the current climate? Please tell me.
Well, it's left-wing populism.
Exactly. And he's not being populist. He's reaching...
Right.
He's not being populist. He's reaching out still to the Blairites. Honestly, he has suspended the ballot trigger process.
It is the weirdest thing in the world for me to watch Corbyn do this. Because ultimately now he's getting the general election. His argument shouldn't be a referendum. His argument should be,
he's getting what he
I'm
wants.
going to deliver the Brexit that the public says that they want it, and I'm going to deliver it from my perspective. Because at this point, he gets what he wants. Like, it's one thing if you're in a situation where he's making the argument, okay, between a Brexit and a second referendum, I would take the second referendum between the two. But this is different. At this point, they're calling for a general election, in which case he has no reason to not implement the referendum. Like, he can literally say, I am going to implement Brexit in a way that I want to implement Brexit, but we are doing Brexit because the public said it wanted to leave. And start there. Screw this referendum stuff.
Yeah.
You don't need it. He just said he wanted a general election, which means the gloves are off from the standpoint of you hitting him. At this point, you're in an election time. Boris Johnson has... If you listen to Boris Johnson's speech, Boris Johnson is making it a foregone conclusion that there will be an election. He even talks in essence. He says, if you elect me as your prime minister,
Jamal,
you're already the prime minister.
He's got a majority of minus 43.
Yeah.
He can't do anything.
Yeah.
He has no working government.
He's powerless.
What are they going to... Seriously, what are they going to do? If he calls a vote of no confidence on himself, are they going to say no to a general election? No, you're good enough to run in the country. You're good enough to run the country, and you're good enough to run the country... It's insane, but you're not good enough to negotiate with the EU. You can run the country, but you can't negotiate with the EU. What insanity is that? This is meant to be our prime minister.
What Boris Johnson knows is what you just mentioned. What he knows is that the public wants to leave. I saw polls that said that Britain would choose to leave even if it meant cutting off Scotland.
Absolutely.
Even if it meant dropping Ireland. Like, think about that for the moment. Even if it meant the dissolution of the European Union itself, I mean, the United Kingdom itself, they wanted to leave. And Jeremy Corbyn is being a Remainer fence sitter. I mean, you know, and the weird part is he's a Brexiteer himself. He was a Eurosceptic.
This is the thing.
Before he got into this remaining nonsense.
His heroes. His heroes. His heroes are Tony Benn. Somebody who was the most anti-EU. Tony Benn was on the BBC live back in the 70s to an audience of millions opposing the EU. That's Jeremy Corbyn's... That's his hero. That's the guy he looks up to the most. He's been anti-EU his whole life. He gets everything. Boris Johnson has got a tenuous grip on government. Grip on government. He's about to give Jeremy Corbyn a clean break from the EU and a definite election. And Corbyn is going, no. How? Please explain how somebody like me is not going to say, okay, this is a fucking puppet show.
Yeah.
Whose hand is up your arse? You know? This is ridiculous. I've been saying for 18 months. 18 months I've been saying, they don't want to give you Brexit. And you know what? It looks like they're about to give you Brexit. And the one person, all the people who've been saying, I want a Brexit and they get everything given to them and then say no.
And by the way, the business community would support Corbyn on this. If Corbyn came
Right.
out and says, yes, I'm going to deliver Brexit, I'm going to deliver my Brexit, the business community could say, well, we don't trust Boris Johnson because Boris Johnson may leave or take us out in a no-deal Brexit. And so we'll go with the guy who, yeah, we think the guy's a socialist, but at the very least, he's not going to have a no-deal Brexit.
Yeah,
Have you seen the financial channels on this stuff?
Yeah.
But the business community is like you would never. It would be like them supporting Bernie Sanders. It would be something like that, where they came in and they're like, oh, God.
Have you
All
noticed
right.
noticed what that has coincided with in the media? You know, they're pro Jeremy Corbyn all of a sudden, business. Do you know what they're not calling Jeremy Corbyn all of a sudden in the media?
Oh, what, a socialist?
Anti-Semite.
Oh.
Business come out for Jeremy Corbyn at the same time as all of the anti-Semitism smears cease.
They vanish because they're terrified.
Around
They're scared.
election
Boris
time.
Johnson is scared the shit out of them. They're like, oh, God, he's going to take us out in a no deal. Oh, the socialists.
It's
Fine.
a theatre, mate.
Fine.
It's a
We'll
theatre.
take
But
the socialists. I love it.
he has so much. I wrote this down beforehand, but all of the things that Corbyn is not. Remember, they're talking about Islamophobia in the Tory party, which is come on. You're talking. He's talking. They're highlighting Owen Jones' talking points and saying that the article that Boris Johnson wrote comparing Muslims to letterboxes, which was a simile, and the way he wrote it was just to provoke the other side into what the reaction they eventually gave. But they're attacking him over Islamophobia, and they're attacking him over this shutting down Parliament for 5 weeks. Now that's what they're attacking him on, and they're out, and Diane Abbott is out, and they're talking in the streets about stop the coup, when all he's done is shut the government down for 7 days, and that could be a bargaining chip to try and get a better deal with the EU, to try and say make them sweat a bit more, because you know as well as I do, it's going to hurt the EU as much as us. And I just wrote down, he's not talking about the OPCW. They're not talking about the possible bombing of a false flag on Syria. He's not talking about Venezuela. He's not attacking them over that. He's not even talking about Israel anymore. He's not talking about that. He's not hitting them over. He had all the opportunities today in PMQs. His first one didn't. He's not talking about Russiagate. Not talk about Boris Johnson with Mifsud. He's not talking about the Novichok stuff. He could hammer him on the Novichok. Do you remember? Boris Johnson was certain that it was Russia. Do you remember? Yeah. He could hammer him on the Integrity Initiative. He could hammer him on Julian Assange's treatment. He could hammer him over the fact that they're weak on terrorism. They support terrorists. They create terrorists by bombing countries who then think, fuck this, I want to go over to the UK and blow some shit up because they blew my family up. He's not attacking him on any of that. But he's attacking him on some Islamophobia in the Tory party and the fact that he shut down Parliament for 5 weeks when he really shut it down for 7 days. Now, the thing is, Jamal, I think personally that he's sitting on a fucking arsenal of weapons that a true left-wing populist would just strike. He's not even striking a match and going, careful. He's not even doing that. He's shut the door and he's locked it and he's bolted it and he's talking about fucking Islamophobia. Why? A truly left-wing populist would open that door and unleash hell on Boris Johnson if he truly wanted power and if he truly cared about democracy in this country. Now, this is the thing. I've been losing subscribers from Jeremy Corbyn supporters. I get it. But I'm an honest actor here. I can only call it as I see it. And you have been sitting there across the pond and you have been seeing this as much as I have. Certainly, you've been paying certainly more attention than most people in America, I would say. Certainly anybody in the media over there. What is your assessment of what I have just said to you? Am I correct in my criticism of him, or am I being too harsh? Because it looks to me like Labour are facilitating this. It really does, and it looks like it's a puppet show. Tell me what you think, mate.
Your show is named Gordon Dimmack. And as that show is named Gordon Dimmack, you look at the world and you make an assessment. This is what I like. This is what I think. And people accrue to you based on that particular assessment. For all intents and purposes, from a policy standpoint, I would imagine you like Corbyn. It's like, I like what this guy wants to push forward, and I've supported Corbyn in the past. I think your issue is, it's like, I want him to throw a punch. And he's not throwing a punch. And not just not throwing a punch, the tenor that he is taking is going to make him lose. that's not a negative per se. That's more so pointing out something that, with my ideological framing, the context that I use to look at the world, I think Corbyn would be better off if he did X as opposed to Y. And it seems like he is essentially kowtowing to the Blairites in the party that hate his guts. I don't necessarily think that's an improper assessment at all. And I understand if people who like Corbyn, even if you like Corbyn, you have to be honest actor in regards to your analysis of Corbyn. Like if I'm looking at Sanders and Sanders is pushing Russiagate, I'm going to ding him for pushing Russiagate because I think that is literally against his best interests, if that makes sense. Like, I understand why he does it. I even understand why he would go along with the currents in the party and so forth. By the same token, I don't like it. And so, I'm going to hit him for it because it's not my job to essentially go along with everything the person go along with, especially when I do not think it's honest or right. I guess you do the same thing in the same point of the UK. I don't like what Jeremy Corbyn is doing. Jeremy Corbyn is sitting on an arsenal that he can unload on Boris Johnson. I would wager there will probably be some things that will be more in line with the left and maybe not necessarily in line with the entirety of the country. And just like over here, that stuff gets moderated to some degree. But I agree with you in general. If he's not within, following a certain thing that you believe is right, the show is named Gordon Dimmack. It will be weird for you not to ding him on stuff that you think he should be following a particular line on, if that makes sense. Like, it would be utterly bizarre if the show is named Gordon Dimmack and you're taking the perspective of Bob, Euland, whoever the hell that is. Like, your job is to say Corbyn is messing up. Corbyn is going to lose this election because of what Corbyn is doing. That is a warning shot. That is hey, problems.
Yeah.
Pay attention to this.
Massive.
I mean, honestly, man, I saw the polling and it shook me. I want Corbyn in office.
Me too. But I want Corbyn of last year in office when he was at Glastonbury. I want that Corbyn.
It's not like Tony Blair. Tony Blair doesn't want Corbyn in office. That's a different, the Blairites, the Tom Watsons of the world. Those guys will put a knife in Corbyn as soon as they can get the opportunity to do so. That's not this. That's not where you're coming from on this. You're coming from a perspective of saying, I want him to win. And there is a large part of the country that wants Brexit. And if he's going to renege on that Brexit, then he is to some degree a turncoat and he is not going to get my support. And if there is enough people like that, either the Brexit party or, I've seen the polling. The Brexit party has become a thing.
Yeah.
They have one thing. We're leaving. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing on their agenda. They're a right-wing populist party. And they are eating the lunch of the conservatives that are wishy-washy on this front. And between them and the Labor and the Conservative Party, who seems like they're going to be making deals in regards to who they run in the various districts, Corbyn needs to be concerned. I strongly suspect that his reasoning, his hesitancy for that election is for that reason. I would wager he's seen those polls also.
Of course. If he was ahead in the polls, he'd be like, yeah, fine, I'll win and I'll sort it myself. But he's not ahead in the polls. And that's because he's been scoring own goal after own goal after own goal this year. And to all your Corbyn supporters who have, come down on me, I get it, all right? I get it. It's a frustrating time. But my job is not to support people. I do support people. My job is to call it as I see it. And like Jamal said, I want him to see him. I want to see Corbyn PM, but Corbyn of 2018, 2017 is PM, not Corbyn of 2019. He's been dog shit. But I want to see that guy PM. And what I have seen consistently for the last 12 months is a man that is scoring own goal after own goal after own goal. And it's my job to call him out on it when he does that. So I hope you understand that. And Jamal, my buddy, he agrees with me. So you know what?
I agree with you.
There you go. You're wrong.
It would be weird if you didn't. I guess that's my point. It is not your look. You're not a politician. It is not your job to just kind of agree or disagree with politicians. Your job is, my name is Gordon Dimmack.
Yeah.
And based on my ideological beliefs and framing of the world, this is what I see when I look out at the world. I don't take it in anything that you said that says I dislike Corbyn. I take it as Corbyn is screwing up in regards to becoming PM. I see that even over here.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So again, one of my subscribers sent me polling on this. And she was like, Corbyn is going to lose this election if he continues the way he's going. Now, what are you supposed to do?
Badly,
Pretend that that's
not
true?
badly. He's
Yeah.
going to lose it badly.
And again, is your job to pretend that's not true? Of course not. I mean, imagine the situation where you're like, Corbyn is going to win. Corbyn is going to win, and he loses. And then you guys, I don't understand how you lost. No, your job is to be like, no, dude, stop. Like, you're listening to advice from people who dislike you greatly. And it seems like I could see it. It's this pull to the Blairites. It's so weird. He didn't start off in this way. He started off with this notion of, I'm going to deliver Brexit in my way. That's how he started off. And when he was running with Theresa May, he kept calling, have an election, because he knew that he would wipe the floor with Theresa May in that election based on that polling. Because again, he was still going to deliver Brexit. He wasn't talking about a second referendum. He wasn't talking about stopping the Brexit, none of that stuff. He was going with Brexit. We believe in the referendum. And Theresa May would chide him over and over again. Is the Labour Party going to go through with the Brexit? Is the Labour Party going to go through with Brexit? Why? Because she knows that if he said no, that they were going to lose all sorts of support throughout the country. And what does he do now? Now he's gotten to the Blairite position. A Blairite position that lost the referendum. That lost. And look, the fact that you have a Brexit party, that's a thing in and of itself. And that Brexit party is getting a share of the electorate that could literally get seats in parliament. They have nothing else but leaving the country. And Jeremy Corbyn is going to take the unenviable position. The guy who was a Tony Benn School of Politics, the guy who was an original Brexiteer, is now in a position of a Remainer bent into form by people who greatly dislike him. Like, it's an extraordinary, weird thing. He has honestly, Jeremy Corbyn has zero reason right now, at this point, with Boris Johnson calling for an election, to toe any notion of a second referendum. He should say squat about the second referendum. He should say, I am going to deliver Brexit in the way that the public has said that they wanted it. And it is going to be a Labour Brexit. Stop with all of this other nonsense. Okay. He's called for a secondary election.
Now, here's what his supporters will say. His supporters will say, well, this was put forward and it was voted for at the parliamentary thing last year, and they voted for it, and that was going to be then their default position. Remember, and it was going to be a referendum with Remain on the table. That was going to be their democratic decider. To which I say, if that's the way Labour does things, then what's the point? They're going to lose, and they're going to lose. And you I know people are going to be horrible to me. Just take a look around Europe at what has happened to the left-wing centrist neoliberal parties. Just take a look around Europe. Take a look at, Mark Blythe. You watched Mark Blythe, I know, Jamal, and he says, in the Scandinavian countries, you used to be able to put a red rosette on a fucking dog and it would win. Now they have to do coalitions with right-wing fascists in order to get into power. The centrists, the neoliberals, they're reaching out to them. Those days are gone. You've got two ways of winning an election now. You've got right-wing populism and you've got left-wing populism. And what Jeremy Corbyn is doing, that ain't either.
So that's weird, man. Usually in the UK, you guys are... well, like I said, you're a tick to the left, regardless of the political space, a tick to the left. And I often, whatever is taking place, meaning the currents that are taking place in one country often takes place in the other. It's so bizarre. So you would have Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and what's his name? Tony Blair. It was like these kind of weird back and forths. And now you have a situation where you may end up with Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. And right now you have in the UK, Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn. It's so bizarre. It is so bizarre. The difference here is, at least in this country, Sanders is trying to knock it out the park.
Yeah, Sanders hasn't been scoring
Corbyn is trying to back away, which is so strange. It's so strange. It's your opportunity. You've been for 3 years trying to get this, and I don't know who's talking. I don't know who's whispering to him in his ear. And I know sometimes it's hard to kind of pull out of a particular political strategy, but pull out of this. Like, honestly, look, I understand, from the standpoint of, this kind of contextual way of trying to explain politics sometimes, but that doesn't really always work. And and so sometimes it ends up with your fence sitting, which looks worse, than picking a pony in this case.
Hmm.
Um, in a situation where you don't have an opportunity for a general election, then I can kind of understand calling for a secondary referendum on what the prime minister is going to put forth as a no deal Brexit. At the point where the prime minister, however, calls for an election, this is different. You're in a different world. And in that different world, you can go with a different political strategy. That strategy is I'm going to get those people who want a Brexit but don't want a no deal Brexit. And you can get those people going with this notion that I am going to deliver my own Brexit. You should not be talking about a second referendum at this point.
But he is, and he's been forced into doing that because of the Blairites in the party. He's been forced into doing it because of the party conference. I think it was last year that they did this, but then it's the party conference that that was when the Blairites adopted the IHRA definition, or the full one, and we all know what a travesty that has been. It's been this reaching out to Blairites and these reaching out to centrists that has really cost the Labour Party and Jeremy Corbyn any chance, I think, of becoming Prime Minister. I won't say he's got no chance whatsoever, but he's got to pull it out. And like I say, he's sitting on an arsenal of left-wing populist weapons, and he's not even striking a match and going, careful, Boris, careful.
Yeah.
And that should tell you all you need to know about whether he's got the stomach for this fight, in my opinion. But I'm just calling it, the way I see it. I hope you understand that.
Good point, man. That's a good
Thanks
point.
so much. Right, we need to talk about American politics, because that's just as fucked up, isn't it? Because we've got the Democratic debates over in America at the moment. I've been keeping people abreast of the Democratic debates over here. I'm one of my favourites is Tulsi. I think Tulsi Gabbard is the only, I would say, I keep saying anti-war, but it's not anti-war, is it? It's anti-regime change war, isn't it?
Yeah.
And she's missed the debate, Jamal. There was some now. I want to cast your mind back to 2016, everybody. The DNC cheated Bernie Sanders out of the primary. We know this because Donna Brazil told us, and we saw all the evidence.
Right,
and we saw it happen in real terms at the same time. But they were going to be transparent and lead with their values, as Tom Perez says, and so they decided to take super delegates away on the first round. But Donna Brazil, as I pointed out in a tweet last year, pointed it out last week. She made this tweet last year that when they took away those super delegates, she said that the Democrats are still very much in the room and are at the table and are capable of setting the menu. And obviously, yeah, that looks like what they've done, because Tulsi has been pretty much cheated out of this third debate. How the bloody hell has that happened, Jamal?
Yeah, she's been shafted on this. I mean, and I'm glad you brought up 2016, because all of this happens in the context of 2016. Tom Perez, so just for history, because it does make sense in the context of how Tulsi and why she's off the debate stage. They cheat Sanders, outright cheat Sanders. Donna Brazil comes out and says so, but you didn't need Donna Brazil. You had WikiLeaks that kind of brought this out, that they were cheating Sanders. Not to mention, every Sanders supporter can see it with their own eyes. Shutting down polling locations, meaning the number of polling locations that people could go to, it forces lines to be longer, which cuts down on the number of people who will go in and vote for a particular candidate. Oftentimes, people who are voted for Clinton would be there early, or they would send in their votes, as opposed to people who are for Sanders, who were younger. Maybe they were independents, and so they would come to the polls. If you can keep those polls longer, those people would have to go to work and so forth, in which case you can cut down the polling locations. In some cases, not even just shutting down the polling locations, like in Nevada, where they literally had a floor vote where they excluded various people in the Sanders camp from the vote, allowing Clinton to get more delegates, or the super delegates in and of themselves, where Sanders would outright win a state by bananas numbers, like 60 to 20 or something, and Clinton will still get it based on super delegates because of people who are there who were has the equivalent of votes of like thousands of people, I think like 10,000 people in some cases, will be able to carry that state. It was extraordinary. It was like, yes. They were outright cheating him. They were outright cheating him. And then the party would say, we're honest, we're honest, there's no issue here. And the Counterpunch and Politico came out with articles almost like a year in advance saying Hillary Clinton is funneling the money from the DNC into her own coffers. What Donna Brazile explained was that Hillary Clinton, that the DNC was broke, that Obama was running a parallel organization to the DNC and is sucking up all of the money from the political system. And so the DNC was broke. They had millions of dollars that they owed to the bank and to vendors. Clinton comes in and pays it off and puts the party on an allowance. Literally, this is what Donna Brazile puts the party on an allowance. So Clinton is running in a Democratic primary of the DNC. And the deal that Clinton makes is that I will give you just enough money to keep you in operation while running in this contest. So she has complete control over the apparatus, meaning hiring decisions, media, all that stuff. Clinton was in control of it all. And while being in control of all of this, Deborah Wasserman Schultz essentially allowed New York to take the reins. Now, Deborah Wasserman Schultz worked with Hillary Clinton in one of her other campaigns. So the person who worked in Clinton in one of her other campaigns ceded control of the DNC to Clinton. Clinton, with this control, Donna Brazile is saying, that's not me, Donna Brazile was head of the DNC, and that the money was being funneled from the state parties that she was getting, meaning Clinton will go out and there would be these state parties. People will give money to state parties because you can give like 300,000, and that money will get funneled from the state parties to New York, to Clinton. She was funneling money in addition to having control of the party and putting the party on an allowance. 1% of the money that was supposed to go to state parties went to state parties. Instead, it was going to Clinton. Now, in this process, Tom Perez says there's no cheating here. All of it was fair and honest. Everything was impartial. So Hillary Clinton was controlling the DNC, having the DNC on an allowance, while the DNC was supposedly running the contest that was supposed to be fair and partial with that same Hillary Clinton in it. Think of a sports contest where the person owns it and is running in it while simultaneously telling you that it's fair and impartial. It's like fair and impartial has no bearing in this process. Even if you want to say that Bernie Sanders wasn't going to win, let's still just own up to the fact that they were cheating him shamelessly. And this doesn't even get into the polling and how the exit polling never matched up. Like the exit polling always would either go for Sanders or a less, even though when the polling actually took place, Clinton would have it in much in spades, in some cases, like well beyond what the exit polling would come out to be. And then when they got to California, they just got rid of the exit polls. Like it was a dodgy contest at best. Tom Perez looks at this and says, no cheating here. And saying there's no cheating here, that there's nothing to see here, folks, everything's impartial. They gaslighted and lied shamelessly through their teeth. Tom Perez says there was an appearance of impropriety. And so in order to deal with this, what we're going to do is we're going to have 1,000 debates.
An appearance of impropriety.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said there was an appearance of impropriety. That is
the nicest way of saying it looks like we cheated the fuck out of Bernie I've ever heard. An appearance of impropriety. It looks like we shafted the fuck out of him.
We shafted him. Now, the DNC's argument, though, when they were taken to court over this, because they were sued over this for fraud, people were like, wait a minute, if I gave Sanders $100, I gave it to him thinking that this was a fair process. This process was fair. You're shafting the fuck out the guy. And so they took him to court. The DNC said, we are a corporation, and we can cheat, and we can choose candidates in a smoke-filled room if we want to do that.
Yes.
We can cheat if we want to cheat. We can lie if we want to lie. You can't do anything about it.
I mean, surely that should say, our organisation, you know that D in the DNC? Yeah, that's the same as the N in the CNN. You know, CNN say their news. Well, we say we're democratic. Honestly, it should sound... They literally argued in court. Yeah, yes, we don't have to do anything that... We don't do it that the voters want. We choose it in the room. It's fugazi. It's a sham.
That's true. As a flat fact, that is true. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are both corporations. They are both essentially taking over, let's say, they're trying to get the public to choose who they want to ride the bus. think of all of these various political parties are just corporations that are running a bus. Like if you were choosing somebody who was going to run Amazon, but instead it's the U.S. government who's going to run it. And so from their standpoint, they're right. They don't need to have a primary. If the Democratic Party wanted to, they could say, we're going to choose Bob Bumfuck over here and run him in a race. But Bob Bumfuck would never win because nobody had any say-so in Bob Bumfuck.
I don't know. He sounds pretty good to me. I'd vote for him.
Bob Bumfuck sounds like a good guy.
His name's Bumfuck. Come on, you got to tick the box
and
there.
a ham sandwich would have did better than Hillary Clinton in that race. But so they have primaries. Part of this process came in because in one of the elections, the Democratic Party just chose a guy. And that guy lost badly. There was almost like a floor fights on the floor of the party, in which case they came up with these kind of new rules. The problem here is if you tell me that this process is earnest, you're lying to me and you're defrauding me because nobody will give Sanders $100 if they thought that their money was being thrown in the toilet. Just as an honest point. So they took him for fraud. DNC said we can lie, we want to lie. Now, my point is, Tom Perez goes with this notion that it was an appearance of impropriety. We weren't cheating him. It just looked like we were cheating him. And so we need to have 1,000 debates. And we're going to have all of this transparency. And we're going to have all of these weird rules and all of this other stuff because of the appearance of impropriety. Meaning they never dealt with the fact that they cheated him. They just gaslighted. And now they come up with these weird rules in order to come up with the debates. They tell candidates, you're going to have 17 polls that you can use to choose whether you're going to get on the debates. Arbitrary polls, by the way, but 17 polls. Of these, between 17, only 5 came out between debate 2 and 3, meaning there are all sorts of polls where Tulsi Gabbard gets 2%, 3%. But those polls aren't polls that the DNC
No, I checked this. These are not like 2-bit polls. These are YouGov. These are Economist. These are like the main pollsters, aren't
polls that are just as good, if not better, than the polls that the DNC. I mean, for fuck's sake, DNC used CNN's shit poll. You know, CNN had a poll where they just had elderly voters, and then they just kind of did this kind of math to figure out what the younger voters were.
364 people. 364 people.
Yeah. They use CNN shit poll. But other polls that are just as good, if not better, where she's at 2-3%, gets ignored. And the issue that people were making is, look, if you tell people that you have 17 polls, and then you really only get 10, and then between the second and third debate, you really only get 5, there's no way for the candidate to show any level of momentum and support. And so you have all of these other polls that you're not using. You should open up it for the other polls so the candidates can show that they have a certain propensity of support. I mean, after all, they're meeting the unique donor requirements. So the issue is the DNC is arbitrarily choosing various polls. And even within the context of the arbitrary polls that it's choosing, you only have a few that came out for the candidates to distinguish themselves. It's unfair.
They're arbitrarily picking and choosing which polls, and they're picking and choosing the polls which Tulsi is not polling above 2% in that. Yes. That's basically now, as I pointed out in my video I did on this, when I cut this video, I will say this. This is why it's the Donna Brazil thing, as I alluded to. It's them still being in the room, still having a seat in the table. It's that, isn't it, Jamal? She was literally blatant about it. She came out and said, it's in the open now. You know we cheated you, even though, I mean, Parker Molloy the other day was gaslighting somebody on Twitter, saying she was using a CNN article saying Donna Brazil said that it wasn't rigged as proof that it wasn't rigged. She's citing CNN as proof it wasn't rigged.
I could read you the article.
Yeah.
And nobody in there, like, granted, Donna Brazil was hawking a book, so fair enough. But this was a political article that was a bombshell. It was such a bombshell. Elizabeth Warren gets asked the very next day. This says, Warren, did they rig it? And Warren says,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. the reporter went.
The reporter, I love
didn't expect that.
It's like a moment of silence. There's just like absent dead air. You know, you never have dead air on the
She walked that back so fucking quick, though, didn't she, mate?
And then she says, wow, that's a powerful statement. And Warren was like, yeah. Then the very next day, Warren comes out, they didn't rig it. And everybody got their ducks in a row. The problem here is what Donna Brazil was such a bombshell that the moment that any conscious, rational person reads the article, you read it and say, even if they didn't think Sanders had a chance of winning, you read that article and you're like, yeah, they were rigging it. It was like, to whatever degree you want to go with this notion that they were cheating him, they were cheating him. You know, I mean, come on. Donna Brazile is on TV. This woman has the indignity of being asked, they rigged it? And she was like, well, I never say rigged. I said the cancer. I was like, what do you mean, Donna? The cancer. The cancer in what? The cancer that caused this what? This unfairness to one candidate. She says, I lit a candle just before I called Bernie Sanders. Why do you need to light a candle before calling Bernie Sanders if there was no rigging or cheating in this process? She said, what I saw broke my heart. Why did it break your heart if there was no cheating? It broke her heart. And it didn't break
my heart. There was no cheating. We won fair and square. It broke my heart.
Yeah, this woman is a Democratic operative. So don't miss, breaking her heart, whatever. She's hawking a book. And she got caught and knows the party got caught cheating. She got caught cheating.
And now they're doing it again with Tulsi.
The thing with Tulsi, it's funny. I can't say they're rigging it against Tulsi. It's almost like they greatly dislike her and they would show her no favor.
They certainly don't
and this
want...
process is greatly just unfair in the bricks, if that makes sense.
They don't want her on stage throwing shade at people like Kamala Harris. Because, she basically she ended Kamala Harris's campaign. Really, she ended it dead.
She ended her campaign in 1 minute. She ended the campaign in 1 minute. Like, that was the most brutal broadside that I think I've ever seen, where she was just going after her. And Kamala Harris' response is, I'm proud of my record. And it's like, wait, you kept a man on death row that you know was innocent, and you're proud of that? Like the audience was groaning. Like the audience was like, ugh.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that? I think it was a vice presidential debate when, I know it was a famous one, when there was a vice president who likened himself to John Kennedy and the other guy had worked with him and he said, I've worked with John Kennedy and let me tell you, you're no John Kennedy. I get the feeling that in years to come, we're still going to be harking back to the time that Tulsi destroyed Kamala Harris in a minute. Yeah, right. Shit was just, people like, she did what the she kept people in prison because of the cheap labour? What the... And honestly, and then CNN, instead of bringing her on and saying, is this true? Can you defend yourself against this? They bring her on and basically let her say, well, I'm a top tier candidate. What do you expect from an Assad apologist?
Yeah. Which, again, she could not touch any, because everything she said was true. Like, do you realize
left-wing populism?
Prison labor 8 cents an hour in some cases, like 8 cents away from slavery.
Yeah.
And the argument that her office made was, look, if we give these workers and let these guys out of prison, we're not going to be able to afford the labor that we need for the state of California. Sometimes that's fighting fires. We're not going to be able to afford to hire the people that we need to fight these fires if we let these people out of prison, even though the judge tells us that we need to let these people out of prison. Now, you need to justify that to a lefty audience that is actively groaning as they're hearing, like the audience was groaning. Oh, it hurt them to hear it. Oh, that's disgusting. And when you get the opportunity to explain yourself, and the only thing you could say is, I'm proud of my record. Oh, and if you notice, Tulsi went back to that, by the way. She was like, no, you kept a man in prison when that man was on death row and you knew that man was innocent. The audience groaned. And then when you get the opportunity, we have these hack journalists who aren't good at their jobs, who the very first question that should have been asked of Kamala Harris the moment that she got down from the campaign thing, you put the mic in her face, should have been, would you like to respond to what Tulsi Gabbard just said there? She hit you with a lot of stuff.
You and I naturally would have asked that question, wouldn't we?
That's the most natural thing in the world to ask. But instead, she's an Assad apologist. She's a Putin apologist. She's this, she's that.
No fourth estate.
This reporter letting her just smear Tulsi in this way, never really bringing it back to this thing of, wait a minute, she said a lot of stuff about you. Do you want to really answer that?
No, it's all it sounds like it's all a theatre over there with the media, mate. I want to talk about the front runner for the Democratic National Committee, because if you listen to the media over there for the last few weeks, This man's been the front runner. His name is Sleepy Joe, according to Donald Trump. His name is Joe Biden. You might remember him over here. My audience will remember him. He was vice president to president. My boss. You'll know that if you understand what I'm about to talk about. Because this guy, Joe Biden, who is the front runner of the Democratic pick to go head to head with Donald Trump, the right-wing populist, is a woman who literally is, I think, 5 minutes away being getting spoon-fed applesauce by a woman in a blue apron. Is that a fair assessment, Jamal? What's happened?
Joe Biden, literally, and when I say literally, I know sometimes I use the term literally, and my wife jokes that literally doesn't always mean literally with me. No,
hasn't it changed?
As an absolute,
the definition's changed now, hasn't it? It's changed.
As an absolute flat fact. Literally could not remember Obama's name. Now his campaign is being run to some degree off of his time with Obama because he doesn't want you to look at his last 40 years that are just outright atrocious, but couldn't remember his name. And he's like, yeah, Putin took the Crimea, which was nonsense. That was wrong. That was a vote. But then he goes into this thing, my boss. And you think to yourself, what does the audience think in that moment?
I saw it.
Man can't remember Obama's name, and he's skating on his record. And last week, he couldn't remember where he was. Again, literally did not know where he was.
That's sad.
Yeah, I love Vermont. Vermont is awesome. He's in New Hampshire. And this is, one mumbling, incoherent speech after the next. He kept calling Theresa May Margaret Thatcher. He did more than once.
To be fair, come. All right, okay. Yeah.
In a Democratic primary, Democrats, blacks vote 90% Democrat. That number is astonishing. But blacks vote Democrat like that because they're terrified of Republicans. There's a history in this country of the monsters being in the other party, in which case they know those monsters in the other party and they vote out of fear more than anything else. In the primary, where blacks vote 90% Democrat, Joe Biden went and said, raising the height of working together with segregationists, people who are out and out, running in the daylight with no shirt on, racists, and showing him working with these guys as being the height of, this is what politics used to be when people used to work together, either putting blacks in prison or having segregationists to prevent blacks from being able to engage in the political process. Like, you don't do that. And there's a certain degree of political acumen that goes into saying that you just don't do that just by virtue of the political process that you find yourself. He's out of it. He's losing his mind, even on a debate stage. My argument that it goes beyond Joe Biden not remembering facts and features, not remembering, when Kennedy was shot, apparently when his marriage took place, not remembering Obama's name, not remembering where he was on the campaign trail, not remembering Theresa May's name. It goes into just him being a shadow of his former self. If you look at Joe Biden's debates in 2008,
didn't he say, Jamal, didn't he say recently something like, poor people are just as bright as white people?
Yeah, that too.
It was poor people are just as smart as white people. That's what he said.
He did. But that's what I mean. In the old days, he would know not to say that. He's losing his mind. His political acumen is out the window. And they're talking about putting him up against Trump. Oh. He got bullied by Kamala Harris, who was shown to be a complete paper tiger when the very next week, in 1 minute, she got taken apart by Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, he got bullied by Cory Booker. And you're going to put him up against Donald Trump. What I'm telling you is going to happen is Donald Trump is going to deride, he's senile. He's losing his marbles. Sleepy Joe, he's not altogether there. He's going to be put in a home pretty recently. He is going to be called incompetent. They're going to call him everything but a child of God. And they're going to run one video after the next of him incoherent, not able to get his words out. They are going to go after him in a way that the Democratic Party wouldn't. He is going to lose. I know people are thinking, Joe Biden is really skating on just notions of electability.
Yeah. It's name recognition. People know him from Obama. That's it.
That's the point. He's not. Those people that think he's electable thought Hillary Clinton was going to beat Trump. They were wrong. They also thought that Trump was working with the Russians and that Mueller was going to find that out. They were wrong. They were wrong in the entirety of this process. Now, here's the catch. Here's the bright spot. it's beginning to show in the polling. Biden is starting to flame out. Now, I've argued that Biden was going to flame out months ago because he was out of kilter with what people in the primary wanted. The catch here is, and the part that I was wrong on, is the stick-to-itiveness of electability. People at a certain point says, I don't care about policy, I don't care about vision, I'm just terrified, just get Trump out of office. In which case, that's my guy. But the problem here is, when you go on one debate stage or one stage after the next, and it looks like you are losing your mind. Biden said recently, people don't care about me missing dates and facts and figures and me lying and all this other stuff. Not to mention he's lying. Like, he lied about a war story yesterday. The other day.
Oh, he got everything wrong, didn't he? The medal,
everything wrong in
the
story.
location, the person. It was this guy, and he picked up another guy. It's like, do these guys have names? No, he got everything wrong.
Either Joe Biden is lying or he is losing his mind. And it is probably a little bit of both.
And either way, it's scary if he's the guy who's going to be up against Trump, because Trump must be he must be licking his lips at the thought of Joe Biden. He must be hoping to God that Sleepy Joe gets the nomination.
I think in the beginning, I think Trump was concerned because I think, like a lot of us, we probably thought, okay, Joe Biden matches up well against Trump. Like, I think Biden.
And then he opened his mouth.
Well, right. And then he opened his mouth. And then we've had 2 months. And then we've had debates. And then you look and say, okay, this guy is no. That's no. There's no way. He will get bullied. I've been right the entire way through this process. British politics and U.S. politics. He will get bullied. You believe that the email issue for Clinton wouldn't go away. Joe Biden on one campaign stage after the next looks like he's losing his mind. And what Republicans are going to do are going to attack that relentlessly. He's not altogether there. This is mental impairment. These are not There is no situation where you could be at your job and they call it a gaffe. They call it a fuck up and you can lose your job over it. You know, I understand that Joe Biden wants to be president. He's wanted to be president for 40 years. But, you know, a blind man can't drive across country. And I feel for him. My heart goes out to him. Everybody has ideas and dreams. You know, there's all sorts of things that I want to do I can't do. There takes a larger society to say, yeah, that's not the safest thing in the world for you to be behind a vehicle, not being able to see it all. And I think the same thing is true for Joe Biden. It's not the safest thing in the world for you to be put in the presidency, not having all of your scruples and losing your mind and slowly going senile.
Yeah, I mean,
they told him to take more naps.
Yeah, I know. My girlfriend told me about that today. She said we're over a year away from the election, and he's having to take more naps already. Yeah, I mean, his own team. I mean, I know. You shouldn't make fun because obviously he could have Alzheimer's. I made a joke the other day. I said, well, the media think this guy got it, what it takes to beat Trump. I'm assuming that what it takes is Alzheimer's, because I shouldn't make fun of it. I'm not making fun of Alzheimer's or anything like that. I'm making fun of the whole preposterous notion that Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump in an election. It's preposterous, isn't it?
All the tools at your disposal should be marshaled to take down Biden. If that means deriding him and joking him that he may have Alzheimer's, that is a better situation than putting a man that may actually be senile into the White House. And no, I don't think it's me joking Alzheimer's. It's me kind of making this point that this guy's losing it. He shouldn't be president. It's just that basic point. And it's not, you know, I'm not making this kind of thing about him being old. I don't care of his age. Clearly, I'm supporting Sanders, and Sanders is around the same age. But Sanders is not making those mistakes. Sanders is not mentally losing it. Sanders is not getting on one debate stage after the next, not remembering his wife's name. Well, okay, that's not fair. Not remembering Obama's name, or not remembering when his wife, when they got married. You know, it's a list every day. I could do a video on it every day. Joe Biden put out a campaign video.
He said Kennedy was shot in the 70s.
Yeah, he didn't know. And then he tethered it to like when he was married or something. It's like, wait, does he not know when he was married? Like, what the hell? And he said Martin Luther King was shot in the 70s. This was the 60s. He was off by a factor of 10.
You know, Jamal, if only we could run an experiment, you know, of a left-wing neoliberal, the centrist, against Donald Trump in an election. And if only we could run an experiment to see what would happen. And maybe we could warn the DNC what was going to happen if we ran that experiment and it lost badly.
That's entirely conceptual, Gordon. I don't know, man. That's entirely conceptual, man. I don't know. You know, the sad part, Hillary Clinton was far smarter than Joe Biden.
Yeah, I know.
Whatever you want to say about her,
I know.
she was running that shit like a pimp. Like when you look at what she puts me to mind in an odd way of Boris Johnson. Like Boris Johnson gets in the office, and whatever you want to think of him, strong arms what he wants to do. I am going to push through Brexit. If you're not following me, I am going to deselect you, even if that means cutting off my nose to do so. I am going to, like, Clinton, when she was trying to run, she was literally saying, if you're going to be against me, you will suffer for it, which is why those people fell in line, signed what they needed to sign. They assumed she was going to win, and they thought there were going to be consequences. She was running the DNC where the money was funneling to her from the DNC. She was a smarter participant than Joe Biden. She is Joe Biden, smarter in pants.
Yeah,
we
the
ran
way
just 2016.
Just for the viewers, I wrote about that in my book about how she was funneling money, how Clinton was funneling money through the DNC, and just the way she was doing it was she set up something called the Hillary Victory Fund, hadn't she?
Yes.
And the reason, obviously, if you're on the campaign and you're in a Democratic campaign, there are limits to how many personal donations give you. There were limits to the top end of much they can give you.
How much you can get? Yeah.
And it was something like, personally, for person, it was something like, from memory, it was something like $8,000. However, for the Hillary Victory Fund, she could take corporations' money up to something like $264,000 per. So she was getting it all through the Hillary Victory Fund, giving it the DNC. Then 99% of it, was it 99 or 90? It was over 90%. It was filtered back to her through the DNC, and that's the way. Basically, I say she didn't cheat. Bernie, she didn't cheat her way to the election, to the nomination in 2016. She bought it. That was
that's mostly right. I mean, the limits are like $2,700, and if you give through the Hillary Victory Fund, technically they look at it as you're giving to the state parties.
Yeah.
I think it's $353,000.
It was something ridiculous like that. Yeah.
But she was taking that money and having that money funneled through the state parties, essentially laundering the money. And she ends up giving the state parties 1%. Now, while she is taking all of this money, only giving the parties 1%, she turns around and says, that damn Bernie Sanders doesn't do anything to help the party. Seriously, like this is what was taking place. But now you have Joe Biden. And Joe Biden doesn't have that level of political acumen. He doesn't
have the level of political acumen to buy the nomination?
No, he doesn't.
Well,
and by the way, that buying the nomination was also from fear. They were terrified of what Clintons would do.
Yeah.
They were terrified. Like they fell in line. They assumed she was going to win it. There would be political consequences if you fell out of line. Tulsi Gabbard is feeling those political consequences in this election.
Yeah, they certainly don't want her in a third debate, taking out another top-level candidate, because they want as many candidates as possible, don't they, at the end standing, because so they can take it to delegates on the second round, because it's pretty obvious, to me at least, from sitting over here, as much as I would like to see a Tulsi Gabbard presidency because she's got an awesome foreign policy and she's the only one who is anti-regime change war, I would say there is Bernie Sanders, and he's the runaway favourite, and he is gaining like a racehorse on Sleepy Joe Biden, isn't he, mate? Tell me about Bernie.
And some of the polls, it seems to be. That mama poll that recently came out, again, top-rated poll. I mean, like infallible in the sense of if you're looking at just the polling thing. And I'm not saying infallible is an absolute, because polling can be off. That's not what I mean. I just mean in comparison to other polls, it stands just as good, if not better, than the other polls. It is a top-rated DNC poll. Sanders took the lead, up by 6. Warren tied, up by 5. Biden down 13. And not just down 13, down across every last demographic that was measured. It was astonishing. He was outright fell apart. Now, in some of the other polling, you have Sanders getting closer. Like in the Emerson poll, Sanders is catching up. Biden is maintaining, but Sanders is catching up in that particular poll. And some of the other ones, again. So it's like, on the whole, Biden, for the most part, is maintaining a lead. By the same token, Sanders is gaining momentum on it. By the same token, Elizabeth Warren seems to be also upping her profile in this particular contest, which means that what seems to look like is going to happen is Biden is going to flame out, leaving Sanders and Warren, with Sanders and Warren creating this kind of weird thing where they may end up splitting votes. Sanders, Warren, and Biden may end up creating this odd dynamic where it goes to a second round vote, in which case superdelegates are going to make a choice again, and all of the superdelegates are still there. And all of them will come into force on the second round.
And as Donna Brazil says, we are very much in the room, and we still have
Very
a
much
seat
in
at
the
the
room.
table, and that is how they're going to set the menu, we think. Now, so the thing is, I listen to a lot of when I first became, I mean, you're not going to, people are not, I know some people are not going to believe this, others are going to say, yeah, it makes total sense, but I wasn't really interested in politics until 2016, until the referendum, and that's sort of how I became interested in politics. And I searched online after Donald Trump won the presidency. I searched online for independent online media because I knew that what I was getting told from the mainstream was bollocks, because something was clearly screwed up here. They just nominated Donald Trump president. Something was severely fucked up, and CNN and MSNBC and all the others weren't telling me. So I typed in independent news and I found TYT, and we all know what happened to them. But from them, I found the likes of yourself and Carl Kalinske and Jimmy Dore and Mike Figueiredo, etc. And I know that you all, Bernie, especially Mike and Carl Kalinske are Bernie supporters, if you like. I know Bernie says that they are going to, Carl Kalinske says they're going to try and cheat Bernie the same way as they're cheating Tulsi right now. They're going to try and their best, and they've obviously got the media of their media, they've got the knives out for him, and can you imagine, for instance, how they would be attacking Bernie right now if he was making the same missteps that Biden was?
Yes. I mean, because there are 2 points. In the last election, they kept saying, oh, Sanders doesn't know anything about foreign policy. Sanders doesn't talk about foreign policy. Elizabeth Warren doesn't talk about foreign policy at all. And then they even used to hit him, oh, he's the white candidate. That's the other racist thing. Oh, he's the white candidate. He's a white candidate. Do you realize Sanders' support is mostly people of color, low wage, women? Isn't that amazing? They say Bernie bros. The woman got on MSNBC and said, Bernie makes my skin crawl, and I think he's anti-woman. And she says, I don't know why I think that. It just is. Is it because he has a penis? Is that what it is? I mean, if you're going to say that you think the man is anti-woman, then I'm going to say I think you're a lunatic. And I'm going to connect that to some degree with the other statement of, I don't know why. Maybe those two things are related to one another. MSNBC has made a choice on who they want. That candidate is Warren. And they have gone out of the way. One of the hosts one time says, Sanders should drop out the race and support Warren. Now think about this. Warren's in third place, sometimes fourth place, the entire race. And they're like, Sanders should just drop out. Utter lunacy. And CNN has been doing that nonsense also. Bernie Sanders told CNN during the middle of a debate, he said, a drug commercial is probably going to show in this debate.
Oh, I saw it.
A drug commercial showed in the debate.
And it did.
It did. And CNN, who has a vested interest in maintaining the dollars from those drug ads and everything else, had the knives out for one Bernie Sanders. The beauty of that debate, though, was that Warren had to support Sanders' Medicare for All because she staked her life on that plan. Meaning, instead of everybody attacking Sanders, you ended up with Warren and Sanders fighting off CNN and the people on stage, and they did gangbusters. They knocked that shit out of the park. Because it's one of those things where the moment that guy throws a punch back and he gets hit and hits back harder, and the public is like, yeah, he makes a good point. It works. Yeah. So it's almost like the level of unfairness to some degree works in his benefit, at least in this particular situation, especially when he is calling it out and saying, you guys are being unfair to me. And yet he also is able to answer the questions and answer them honestly and still win. Because his thing was, are you going to raise taxes to pass Medicare for All? He says, yes. Nobody wants to answer that question, yes. He says, yes. He says, however, you are going to get that money back. Meaning more money is going to be coming back to you from the standpoint of medical bills than you're going to be putting on in taxes. Now, when CNN asks a question, they don't ask it in training.
How are you going to afford something that's cheaper?
Right. That's what. Right.
Explain it.
doesn't talk about it in that way. CNN just like, are you going to raise our taxes, Sanders? What CNN is talking about, Jake Tapper, are you going to raise my taxes, Bernie Sanders? Me, Jake Tapper, are you going to raise my taxes? And there are drug ads that we're not going to get if you pass Medicare for all. Us as a network aren't all that happy about it, so we're going to ask you questions that are entirely skeptical. Hey, guy that paid $20 million of his own money to get into the race to tell people they can't have nice things. Do you have anything to say about it? Yeah, that happened. Delaney, who's so rich that he spent $20 million of his own money. He is 1% in the polls. His own campaign started leaking information to the press to try to get him to drop out of the race. But he gets on the debate stage and attacks Bernie Sanders saying, we can't afford it, Sanders. I know I have $20 million to just burn away to tell people they can't have nice things, but we can't afford it. Do you realize it annoys the shit out of me. This is the party, the Democratic Party.
Has he made the third debate, by the way?
That was the second debate.
Has he made the third debate, Delaney? Or has he dropped out?
No, oh God, no. Hell no. Delaney spent $20 million.
I was going to say, if he's made the third debate, then something's seriously wrong.
Yeah, there was no. Delaney
anyway.
is not in that third debate. Nobody is ever going to talk about Delaney ever again in life. He is going to essentially fade away from the political process, unknown, with the ignoble history of just getting walloped over and over again by Warren and Sanders in a debate where he spent his own money to get embarrassed. This is the party that literally said, we're going to put a man on the moon. Had no idea how to do it. None. And yet, in 10 years, Kennedy put a man on the moon. Now, I am not one of those people that is so comically naive to believe that Kennedy did this for scientific exploration. Nonsense. It was a missile, it was a race against the Ruskies in the way they would put it. And so this notion of freedom and justice in space just meant the U.S. to have freedom and, of movement in space and essentially domination. This party that went so far as to say we're going to put a man on the moon now comes out and says we have no ability to pass Medicare for all, something that is entirely just a policy choice. Now, and I'm supposed to sit back, richest country on the planet, incapable of doing it, even though I can look across the pond and see that it looks like they did it. And it looks like all these other countries in Europe did it. It looks like other countries in South America was able to do it. Why can't you? It doesn't follow. The logic doesn't even make sense. And you have all of these drug companies spending billions of dollars to try to scare the shit out of people into supporting something, trying to say that this policy that is in your best interest is not in your best interest. And is getting all of these Democrats to come out here and say Medicare for some, Medicare for people with bad backs, Medicare for people, with bad legs and missing limbs, and all of this other nonsense is that Medicare for all. They jumped the shark. And this is kind of the reaping the whirlwind thing. They raped the American public in the standpoint of medical bills for decades. Year after year after year, we're paying 4 times as much as everywhere else in the rest of the world, twice as much as everywhere in the rest of the world. And the drug costs, they would raise drug costs like 100% on a whim, not because anything materially changed, but because it's a capitalistic endeavor. The goal is to maximize profit, and it's something that the public needs, in which case you can raise this like the person needs water. Oh, you need this water, huh? Well, I have this great, delicious cold water, and you can get it for the tune of $1,000. And it's like, it's milking the public in something that the public absolutely needs. Fine. You've pissed the public off. And now the public is essentially saying, we want it all. We want Medicare for all. We don't want you to have the capacity to sell your drugs to the media. Why are you selling your drugs on television? Anyway, the public has no ability to make a determination on whether that's drugs in their best interest. That is advertisement. You don't need to do that. And from this standpoint on, the insurance is no longer part of this process.
Yeah,
I love it. You've raped the public. The public is pissed off. And I look at this process as, yes, you've raped the public. Now let's do something about it. And what we're going to do about it is have Medicare for all. And by the way, this is best case scenario. You know what I mean? Like, the argument that we're making is, from the standpoint of the public itself, it makes all the sense in the world to cut down where you don't have to pay a bill when you go to the doctor. Okay. You don't have those copays. You don't have to pay for the money when you get your surgery or when something takes place. You have elder care, tooth care, dental care, all this other stuff. We're expanding all of these services to cover the human being. We're an evolved society, and as such, we can afford it.
Jamal, I want to talk to you a little bit about this Medicare for all stuff, because it's something that's dear to my heart. Now, I've got a bit of lag here on my computer, so by the way, there's breaking news. By the way, I've just saw Boris Johnson's lost his bid for a 15th of October election. They've voted it down. I'm assuming that means that Jeremy Corbyn and the Lib Dems, etc., voted against it. So who knows? Maybe he will call a vote of no confidence on himself now.
Wow. That's a crisis. Wow.
We'll get back to that.
Wait. That is smash mouth politics. Like, because understand what just took place. Boris Johnson has staked all political capital on we are leaving on October the 31st. Come hell or high water, I am an alpha male. And he rips his shirt off. He has all this like gorilla hair on his chest. And now Parliament has passed a law saying you will go to Europe, to Brussels, to get an extension. Boris Johnson say, well, fine, I'm going to call a general election. They say, no, you're not going to do that.
This is serious shit, Jamal. This is serious shit because I don't know whether they have thought about the optics of this or they just don't give a fuck. This is serious shit. Think about it.
Oh, wait,
right?
What does he do? I mean, this is sort of a crisis, right? I mean, Boris Johnson said he's not going to do that. So what is he going to do? He now has no capacity to call a general election. He says he is not going to go to Brussels. Yeah. Parliament has commanded him to go to Brussels, and they have forbade him from even having an election as an escape clause.
So for 3 years,
what does he do?
For 3 years, the Tories and the establishment have frustrated Brexit, a Brexit that people voted for, that people expect to happen. For democracy, for us to prove that we still are a democracy and the people still have sovereignty over their own government and the government are just holding it for them. To prove this, they have to implement the Brexit, right? So they've frustrated it for 3 years. Then, finally, Boris Johnson, who has got a minority government and now with a majority of minus 43, says, right, okay, fuck you, EU, if you want to play hardball, if you are insistent on this backstop, which I keep saying is not the ice wall. Just like the ice wall, it's fictitious, doesn't exist. Anyway, he basically said the backstop has got to go, otherwise there's no point. There's no point, we can't do this with the backstop. And the EU have said it must be there because they know, hey, no deal. It's off the table. They know they can take that. So, Boris Johnson, right, has taken this. It's going to be Brexit on the exit. That is incredibly popular with the nation who have been frustrated over Brexit for years and wanted it and voted for it. Incredibly popular. He's shooting up in the polls. Corbyn's shooting down. And then he says, right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give people Brexit. It's what people want. And all the people are like, yes, he's finally going to get Brexit. He says, I'm going to go to the people again and they can vote in an election. And everybody goes, yes. And Jeremy Corbyn says, no, we're not going to the people. That's fucking anti-democratic, isn't it?
It's not. I mean, look, I got to be honest. I don't entirely disagree with Corbyn on this. I mean, you just said it yourself. Think about what you just said. If Corbyn goes in an election right now, he will lose.
Yeah.
And Boris Johnson has been screaming about, I don't want an election, I don't want an election. Nonsense. He knows exactly that he needs an election. And what does Corbyn do? Corbyn is saying, because at this point, this has nothing to do with Brexit, oddly enough. This has everything to do with the smash mouth politics of making that government scream. Ultimately, he is forcing Boris Johnson to go hat in hand by law, to do something that Boris Johnson said he would never do. What is Boris Johnson going to do? Like, do you understand my point? Like,
yeah,
I know. I get your point where you're like,
my point.
You need to have a general election. The problem here is, if you are Jeremy Corbyn, the position that allows your opponent to scream is this: go and tell Brussels, go with hand in hand, go on your knees and get an extension. Boris Johnson has said he will never, while there is breath in his body, do that. So what is he going to do? Is he going to break the law? Like, this is smash mouth politics.
He's doing
whatever you want to say about Corbyn, this is cutthroat politics.
It's right-wing populism, and this is the way it works. But the thing is, you saying Corbyn, I agree with Corbyn. Listen, it doesn't matter to me whether he's... all right. You can see his point then. You can see his point. I can see his point too. But my point is, he wouldn't have been forced into taking this course of action if he hadn't been scoring own goals every fucking week this year.
That's true. I agree with you on that part. That's true.
He wouldn't be in that position right now. He would be in... To be honest, I'm of the opinion, Jeremy, I'm on the opinion that If Jeremy wanted to be PM, he would be by now. He would have played a better game and there would have been an election and he would be. But it seems to me that every step he's taking, and I know you know Mark Blythe and I read him a lot, and he was right on Brexit, he was right on Trump, and he is of the opinion that Jeremy Corbyn is merely crisis management for a dying Labour Party. And you know what? The more things carry on and the more I see this sort of stuff, this is just a theatre. I just think, you know what? I think Mark Blythe might be right again.
Now, to be fair, this is theater to some degree.
Yeah.
I mean, again, on a lower level, or let's say higher level, I guess it depends on the perspective. There is Brexit that is supposed to take place. The UK is supposed to leave the European Union. Within the context of that game, there are smaller games that are taking place from the standpoint of people trying to take power to choose who's going to lead with that, meaning who's going to get the opportunity to take Europe out and to use the European Union and this Brexit as a proxy for politics to put a knife in the Tory party. Personally, I think the Tory party is self-destructive. That's what I think. I think the party is breaking into Brexit.
I think they all are. I think all of the political parties are just disintegrating. I think we are on the verge, on the cusp of a new kind of politics, not just in this country, but the world over.
Agreed. It's a rebalancing. And in that rebalancing, you have this situation where I don't know. Honestly, I do think Corbyn wants power, but he ends up in a situation kind of like Sanders, where there are times where these guys toe lines based on things, either people in the room or things that they think that they need to do in order to get from, like, Jeremy Corbyn is not a Remainer. You know what I mean? Like, and if he's towing that line, he's towing the line because he thinks he has to toe the line for some particular reason. I don't know if it's because Boris Johnson is taking such a strident thing of I'm leaving that he feels he needs to play opposition. I have no idea why he's doing this. I would say, as a chess player, there's an aspect of me that likes the making him scream thing. Like, there's an aspect of me that likes it. But I take your point as fair and right, that ultimately Corbyn needed to have been a little bit more, like, I don't think you can ignore a referendum. I am an absolutist on this almost. Like, if you call yourself a democracy and you have to adhere to the referendum, and you can't, even if he says, I want my own, calling the second referendum stuff is a no. I think he's listening to the wrong people. I agree with you on that part. I guess the question becomes, if Corbyn was doing better in the polls on this, and if he took this notion of his own Brexit, would they even offer this notion of a general election? Meaning, would Bojo, if Bojo thought he was going to lose that election, would Bojo put that election up?
Of course not. No.
He might have a choice. Yeah. Like, this is why politics over there is so fascinating. Like, Parliament has a bone in its throat, which is Brexit. And there's no capacity in Parliament to discharge it in any particular way. And yet Theresa May is absolutely right. You can hear her from the grave. Stopping no Brexit means you have to have some kind of Brexit. You have to do something. You have to pass something. You can't just not do anything. And Parliament has nothing to discharge any level of Brexit. And so now the fight is almost over, just making the prime minister weaken and screaming because the prime minister is being forced to do something he doesn't want to do. And not just forced, like by law is forced to do it. Like, this is so weird. And it's like Bojo is like, I'm never going to do that. And Parliament is like, you will listen to the will of Parliament. Go and do what you said you would never do. There's an optics, and I agree with you, a theater to this that I can appreciate, man. Like, you have no idea. And maybe it's because I'm not there and I'm not living in it. But there's something awesome about a politician saying, I will never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, do X. And the government of that country says, go do X. And you're like, fine, I'm going to have a general election. And they say, no. Do X. Right. How long? Like, you have to appreciate that, even if it's like, God, this is theater, and God, Jeremy Corbyn is fucking up. There's an appreciation of Boris Johnson just being in this torture. You will listen to the will of Parliament, sir. I don't care what you're bluster. You will listen to the will of Parliament, otherwise you're breaking the law. Now, I agree with you. The weirdest thing in the world would be for Jim saying, I'm going to call a no confidence vote on myself.
He's gonna do it. And
He may do
I
it.
thought about it today. I thought he's gonna do.
May do it.
He's gonna get one of his pals to call a vote of no confidence. And the thing is, he's getting about 300 votes at the moment. 301. He only needs 10 or something or 15 from the other side to vote with him, and then he's got his general election. And Jeremy Corbyn. We are certain for a general election, Corbyn. I don't understand why it's a desperate last play, because if it fails, that's it. He's waved the white flag. It's over.
Let me ask you this. Is it possible that Jeremy Corbyn knows this also? Meaning, Boris Johnson doesn't want to go to the European Union. And you might be right. He might say, between going to the European Union and just completely evaporating my political capital, as opposed to having somebody call a no confidence, they may just do that. In which case, we have this general election. Meaning, he gets the general election in either way. And in this case, it's getting it in this kind of ignoble way. But the problem is, which is your point, can he win that general election towing the line that he's been towing? And that's a whole different animal. And I agree. I am a Corbyn supporter, man. I have old videos where I am driving down the road screaming, Jeremy Corbyn.
I try and figure out why he's doing what he's done, and the best case scenario is he's trying to fall on his sword for people and fucking missing. That's basically best case scenario, in which case you're incompetent, you can't run the fucking country. Anyway, I digress. We were talking about Bernie, though, because I was talking about how I found new media, and I know some of the new media are saying, listen, they're going to cheat Bernie this time, same as they are with Tulsi at the moment, same as they did in 2016, but we think he's going to be that popular, even if they cheat. It's not going to make a difference, and he's going to be the nomination. Now, to be honest, I'm still hoping that Tulsi's going to rise in the polls. I'm still hoping that when she gets on the ground, and do you still have the caucuses, the Iowa caucus over there, Jamal? Or have they? We
still have the Iowa caucus.
That's a really big one, isn't it? The Iowa one. It's a little bit different.
It's weird. It's only big because it's the first one. And it sets the tone.
But that's the one where they get in a room and they stand behind them, don't they? And they actually get people. And this is why I was interested, because when Tulsi gets on the ground there, she's going to get people fucking standing behind her, isn't she?
So the caucuses are weird, and they're trying to get rid of them. But ultimately, you have a bunch of people in the room for hours, and they're like fighting for their candidates. Like, I want this person. They're haggling and all this other stuff. And you have caucuses require less votes, because you have less people, can do it. In an election, you go, you make your vote, and you go with your business. In a caucus, these guys are there for hours. And so you have you need less people in order to kind of make that work.
Is he going to win the nomination, or are they going to cheat him? That's the point I wanted to ask. Do you think he'll get cheated, or?
So I would say it this way: for the first time in my lifetime, I'm a 42-year-old man. I just had my birthday on August 31st.
You look cracking, mate. You don't look a day over 41.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
No problem, mate.
But it's the first time in my lifetime where there's a candidate on the ballot where he has a chance. Like, that's all it is. It's a chance. And it's a legit chance. Biden is going to flame out. When Biden flames out, Sanders will be the front runner. And it will be a contest between Warren and Sanders. That's what I think. I think Biden will still be in a race. I don't think Biden is, going to essentially be taken out entirely where he just kind of leaves. But I really do think he has a chance. And if he gets through the primary, he has a chance to win. If Sanders was going against Trump in 2016, Sanders would have won that race. Yeah. Clinton himself even said that.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just, he's opened up a political space that they thought was impossible to hold in the United States. And much of the stuff that he's putting forth is popular. Like, I always joke, I'll say, well, he calls himself a democratic socialist, but no real socialist calls him a socialist. He's not talking about taking over railroads. Or electric bills. And then at one point he came over to things saying we need to take over the energy company. It's like, yes. Like he realized none of this incremental nonsense. When you get in power, you go whole hog because you're not going to get an opportunity to do it again. And so he started one plan after the next, transformational plans. He is literally talking about a transformational policy on every sector in the American population. He has a chance. Like, honestly, no bullshit. And so, he has the hoops to go through. Meaning he still has to go through Warren. He still has to go through Biden. But that chance is real. So whether they cheat him again, if they do, it won't be overt. They can't allow it for it to be overt. They would lose if it's overt, which means that you're going to get CNN, you're going to get MSNBC, you're going to get, shit polls, you're going to get gaslighting, you're going to get that type of stuff. But whether it goes as far as, like the stuff like shutting down polling locations and that type of stuff to game it, I'm not sure. But maybe. I mean, I don't look a party that says we can lie and cheat for the most part and never own up to that. I don't think have necessarily changed all that much in regards to their tenor. It's more so they just got caught. In this particular case, will they try to cheat Sanders if they get the opportunity? Yes, especially if they think they can get away with it. They've been having anti-Sanders meetings, for God's sake. Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, some of the people in the race, literally having meetings to try to stop Sanders. They don't like him. They don't even consider him a Democrat. But if he gets enough public support and public will, and if he can eat through these other candidates, which again, he's in number 2 the entire race, he hadn't budged, he could win.
Well,
that's the most honest assessment I think anybody can give him.
No, and I thank you too. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about Bernie with you, and specifically his power with regards to this Medicare for all. Now, we saw Bernie's power over here in the UK. Bernie got Amazon pay rises, didn't he, last year?
Yeah,
and
yes, he did.
He got them pay rises the world over. So he got roughly 30,000 people in the United Kingdom pay rises, and it was huge pay rises of like 15,
No
20%.
way, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was 30,000 workers over here got pay rises because of Bernie Sanders. Our own fucking government haven't done that in 9 years, and this guy did it.
Bernie Sanders got pay rises to workers in the UK.
Yeah. I think it was something like 36,000, something like that. I know.
That's awesome.
This is how powerful he is. Now, one of the things that really struck me when I came to America in 2008, I was there when Obama won the presidency. Yeah. And one of the things that struck me was your healthcare system, or rather your lack thereof. Yes. Because my friend over there that I met my friend Randy over there, and he is possibly one of the greatest people I've ever met. He is a wonderful singer as well. He sings at clubs and, at riverside places. He's a great guy. Yeah. And I was in the car with him and we were going somewhere, and he was talking to me about he doesn't have healthcare. And he was talking to me about how he works at a panel shop spraying cars. And I'm like, well, does the singing not pay? Because I heard him sing, he's a fucking great singer. I was like, does the singing not? He says, no, I've got enough to live on the money. I can live on the money. I take the panel beating, the panel spraying car job for my healthcare.
Just for the healthcare.
So, yeah. Hold on a minute. So this guy, a singer, wears a mask and a suit, one of those suits, mask, and gets himself in a closed room to spray cars, the just bodies of cars, right? And whatever. And he does it not because he needs the money or he needs it to live. He does it specifically. He puts himself through all of that with his singing voice, etc., because he needs the healthcare. And I couldn't get my head around it. I couldn't. Yeah. I thought this is wrong.
Healthcare is attached to jobs in the United States, meaning most of the people have healthcare through their employer. And so if you lose your job, for the most part, you lose your healthcare.
Well, a couple of years later.
And even with that, it's like $200-300 a month. I mean, I pay like $200-300 a month for healthcare, and that's not even that's not even including a secondary healthcare that you have to pay for. Like, it's obscene. Do you realize I was in I think it was Egypt. I was in Cairo, and when I was in Cairo, I was waiting to get seen in a clinic. I was at a health clinic, and the guy I didn't know the guy spoke English. He was German. He comes out and he starts smoking a cigarette. The coolest man I've ever met in my life, ever seen in my life. And he turns to me and says, "How much are you paying for this?" And I tell him I'm like $250, and he's like, "Oh God." And he says, "I don't understand why you guys allow your system to act that way." He says, "You realize I don't have to pay for this." He says, "If I go somewhere else to travel, my government pays for this. We, as a society, decided that we didn't want people to individually have to deal with these bills, and we cover it." Everywhere I went, everywhere I traveled across the globe, it was the same case. When I was in Portugal, they would say, "God, I don't know why you guys allow your healthcare system to be that way. If you could be dirt poor in this country, and you still get the healthcare like anybody else in this country." Yeah. Not in the United States, buddy.
What I quickly found out was you don't have a system that makes people better. You have a system that makes a few people richer. That's basically your healthcare system. Because my friend that I was talking about who took that job, a few years later he got cancer. And remember, he took the job at the place spraying just for his healthcare. He got cancer and he had to have life-saving chemotherapy. Now, he had that, and it works out that he's recently got the all clear, although we know there's never an all clear with cancer. However, he had to pay $7,000 before they would even give him the treatments, even though he's got the healthcare. And you know how he got the $7,000, Jamal? You'll probably be able to guess, because it's the number one reason that...
Probably crowdfunded it.
Yeah, he went on GoFundMe, and he had to get that $7,000. Now, he did, and he survived. Now, I want you to contrast that with over here with the NHS, because there's a story over here at the NHS that I want to talk to you about, and I'm going to read you it now. And I'm actually going to go to my Guardian, to the Guardian, GCHQ's mouthpiece, because it's the only one that's the first one that I found. But I'm going to read it you because there's something that I woke up to today, because the NHS, on our NHS today, we found out that there is a life-saving drug, I call it life-saving, that they are offering on the NHS that cures people's blindness. A baby that's been born blind, it cures them. This is a one-off injection, will save children from inherited blindness. NHS England to fund treatment costing £613,000 for rare blindness disorder. If that baby with that inherited blindness was born in America, and it was born in, I don't know, middle class or lower class household, that baby would be blind for the rest of its life.
Yes,
yet over here, one injection and it's cured. That's the difference. That's the difference, isn't it?
It's worse than that, Gordon, because, for us, it's insurance companies. Insurance companies are leeches, and they take like 30% of out of the process, meaning their job is to make profit. How do you make profit if you're an insurance company? By denying coverage.
Yeah.
The only way they can make their money is if they can say, okay, we're going to not allow coverage in this particular case, but okay, we're grudgingly going to allow it in another case. That shouldn't be a business. If the goal is healthcare, the idea that you have a company that's job in this is to separate the wheat from the chaff, that wheat from the chaff is people actually getting that healthcare, and they make profit off of not having those people get help. It's a problem. It's one of those things that shouldn't exist. And you're absolutely right. That child would have been born blind, as opposed to in one of the other countries where the issue is not profit, the issue is the healthcare itself.
Yeah, the baby will be fine if it's born to a rich household and who can afford the $613,000 or whatever it is. They'll probably charge $613,000 for the insurance forms, even if it only costs about $6.13. That's what they'll charge. But if that baby in America is born in a rich family, it's fine. But for the 90% of families over there, it's going to be blind for the rest of its life. And how is that? This is the most advanced country on the planet you live on. This is the richest country that there ever has been on this earth. How can it be you don't have healthcare?
It wasn't a priority. Honestly, the richest country on the planet. So if you understand it, there's a certain degree of propaganda that goes into this country with this notion of, rugged individualism and all this other nonsense. Ultimately, those are things where the 1%, for the most part, convince the rest of the public that these are things that they as individuals need to deal with on their own. Other countries weren't so deluded. And those countries had enough sense to say that us as a society itself don't need markets to invade each and every place, especially when those markets, because ultimately you have a brand or a product that people can't go without. And that for the most part, you could charge them ungodly sums. It is a democratic choice at that point to say, yeah, let's not have markets there. We don't want people screwed over in this particular way, and we need access to these products and medications and drugs and everything else. We didn't do that. Other countries had a good enough sense to do it. It is up to this particular generation to take the lift. And, for the most part, that's what you're saying. This generation taking the lift and trying to make this work.
You're going to have to, man, because this is just, fucking Venezuela has healthcare. Syria has it. Russia has healthcare.
Cuba has healthcare.
Fucking Malaysia. Saudi Arabia. I do hope that we are seeing the end of this healthcare Ponzi scheme in America. And I hope it happens very soon. And I hope that the people who have been jacking up these prices, I hope there's some repercussions. However, I'm a bit of a pessimist lately, and it seems that people who do these sort of white collar crimes get away with it, and the blue collar people, they don't, the poor people. But I suspect it's always been that way. But and if there's anything else on that, you're okay to talk about. There's something that I really want to talk about with you.
I am I guess I'm neither. I mean, I guess I'm in this camp of it's I look at it as a siege war of sorts, and the goal of it is to win.
Yeah.
And you use whatever you have at your disposal to try to make that work. And you try to cut through anything that's standing in the way of stopping you from accomplishing your objectives. And that's whether that's a person, or whether that's a system, and or whether that, for that matter, is a party. That's the way I look at it. I don't. I don't necessarily think it's not difficult. There are all sorts of things that are difficult. It doesn't necessarily mean that they shouldn't be done or that it's not impossible to pull off. And if it's ever going to happen, it's now. You know what I mean? It's like any time before, this is the time where there seems to be a certain degree of resonance around this notion of healthcare, and that people are focused on that very specific issue, and they're freaked out about the costs and everything associated with it. I mean, Obamacare passed, and when Clinton was like a month before Clinton got elected, healthcare rates went up 50%. Because he essentially tethered it to the health. Republicans are like, oh, this is governmental health care, a giveaway to the insurance companies.
No public
Republicans
option.
Government health care is nonsense.
If you're going to run Obamacare, you have to run it like Germany. If you're going to run Obamacare, you have to run it like Germany. It works.
Yeah.
Anyway, there is one subject, Jamal, that I have been itching to talk to you about for weeks, because I saw a video that you did about the US Navy. Right, let me frame this right, because the US Navy are starting to come out and say, yeah, we're seeing some weird shit here, and it's UFOs, and they're doing some weird stuff, and they're coming out and they're admitting to it, and they're admitting they don't know what it is. Now, my question to you is this, because I know that you have looked at this very, very deeply indeed, and my question to you is this: are we being primed for the mother of all false flag events? Are they going to fucking try and do a false flag on us as if it's been done by aliens? Because it seems to me that is what they are priming us for. What's happened here, Jamal? Fill us in.
All right, so Tom DeLonge, rock star from Blink-182, had a fascination with UFOs. Tom DeLonge is all throughout the WikiLeaks documents. And Tom DeLonge is essentially saying, look, I want to be able to bring this stuff to the public. And Tom DeLonge makes these governmental contacts, these spooks, and they give Tom DeLonge what he wants. What do you know? 3 videos hit the press from the Pentagon. Pentagon initially was like, we didn't put those videos out. Well, the Freedom of Information Act says that the Pentagon put those videos out. You can even point to the person who got those videos in order to be released. Those videos hit the airwaves, the Nimitz, one of the Navy ships. And I'm calling them by name because we know exactly where the ships were. And the Navy is not saying that this didn't happen. They are
This is unprecedented, isn't it? Them admitting to this.
It is. The New York Times comes out with an article saying that the U.S. government has a black budget project studying UFOs. ATIP. This is a bombshell. For all these years, the U.S. government says they weren't doing it. For all these years, the government was lying. Before New York Times Political came out with this story, Grant Cameron, a UFO guy, for almost a year, has said, the story is going to come out. They're going to release the story. Now, Grant Cameron knew. So this story comes out, and people are like, what? Luis Elizondo, the guy who's running that black budget project, quits his job and goes to work for Tom DeLonge in his new program, To the Stars Academy, that supposedly has the responsibility of being this kind of gateway between government and the public and getting this particular story and this information out. Now, Luis Elizondo starts talking to the press. Now, Luis Elizondo is being straightforward. He says, look, my job was to have scientific investigation into anomalous activity that we were seeing in the air to determine whether it was a threat and whether it was even legit. Based on my scientific observation, because Aaron Burnett of CNN asked him, are we being visited? Luis Elizondo says, based on my own scientific observation And there's plenty of videos that you guys haven't seen. You guys have only seen 3. You guys have only heard the pilots talking on 3. There's far more videos that are out there, including potential materials. Based on that, the answer is yes. These are not our craft. I don't believe these are our craft. That's what he said.
They're moving. They are moving at a speed. And now, from what I can tell, it's not the speed horizontal. It's the vertical speed, isn't it? It's almost like they're appearing and disappearing. And it's like they're defying the laws of physics, what they're saying that they're spotting.
Yes, we understand it. Because because again, the pilots themselves come out and start talking. Meaning the pilots who are on these videos. So understand, in the past, we have this document that was in this vault that we believe came from so-and-so. But that's not this. This is videos being released showing craft that are doing weird, anomalous stuff. And pilots talking about it doing weird, anomalous stuff. These are the ships themselves where you can identify the Roosevelt or the Nimitz. These are the pilots themselves that are coming out talking to the press, multiple pilots. Meaning the radar footage, the ships, the pilot, all of this stuff is out for review. The pilots themselves said, it was a piece of technology. It wasn't ours. It was doing stuff that we couldn't do. And that they were moving at speeds that left our craft like we were standing still. In fact, it was going so fast, in fact, that a human being would have been crushed in the craft. Now, this is what the pilots are saying. The pilots are not saying this from the perspective of, it was some light in the sky. The pilots are...
He's saying the G-force would crush him if he was going that fast.
They're looking at the technology for minutes on end, saying, this is a piece of technology and it's not ours. Now, when these guys are going on the press and they're having these conversations and everything else, New York Times comes out with another story. It's not just 1 or 2. Many pilots are seeing these things. Yeah. Now, at the Aspen Forum, one of the Navy commanders I think it was for the China area, for Asia Pacific. These are neocons. And this was a forum that was not for aliens. The question was, how does the United States curb the influence of China? That was a question. A guy in the audience says, what about them UFOs? Now they laugh at this guy. They shouldn't laugh at this guy because all of the stuff that's been hidden in the press has said, this is legit. This is not BS. The general says, or the admiral says, yeah, for a period of time we were engaged with something, but we've opened up a new branch where people can report those activities, and that's all I'm going to say about it. It's like, what? You just admitted. This is a branch of the U.S. military that has just admitted we have been experiencing anomalous activities that we don't know what they are, that is doing things that goes beyond our craft, but we're not going to say anything else about it.
So guy in the audience asks an admiral a question about UFOs. Everybody laughs at him. Admiral says, well, we've sorted that, but now we've got the thing, and everybody goes, what the fuck?
The admiral says yes. And I'm always enamored by this because, the moment that you're on CNN and the guy who's running a black budget project about aliens says, yes, I think we're being visited, and you don't immediately stop the program. Instead, you go to like a McDonald's commercial. He's just like, this is somebody who's part of the government. Now, Grant Cameron's argument is you're getting confirmation. You're not getting disclosure. The difference between those things is it's not Trump coming out with an alien body saying, here's the alien body, here's the shit, bam, and leave. It's confirmation. It's this kind of two-step of whatever, and you can understand it to some degree, whatever you put out in the public, you're stuck with. If the public reacts in a way that says, oh shit, they start setting stuff on fire, you're stuck with that. Yeah. As opposed to, we're pushing this out gently and seeing how the public reacts, and the public reacts.
Once it's out, it's out. The genie's out the bottle.
Right. And then instead, the public to confirmation has been like, okay. Like,
I don't know.
The weirdest thing to me, these guys are just calling and says, we are being visited by something that we don't know what they are. Or at the very least, something is in our airspace that we don't know what they are. At the very least, on an overt level. That's what's being said. I have some skeptics on my channel. I was like, oh man, they don't know what it is. Yeah, but at the end of the day, this is not a document. This is a lot of people, part of the government, asking Trump, what about them aliens? Ask Congress members, asking the Navy, what about those aliens? What about those ships? What about those videos? What about those? All of these people who are in government at this point have started asking questions. And the media has started asking questions. And the media started publishing stuff about it. Like the point where you have people who are in the military. The guy who, Fravor, I think his name, was flying on 9/11. He was the guy who was making sure our skies were safe. So if you're looking for legitimacy, he's it. And he's saying something was in our skies that was doing stuff that I had no idea what they could do. It was a piece of technology and it wasn't ours. here's the catch. My argument is it's either us or it's not. And both and I say that, but when you think about it, both are profound. If it's not us, there is something else in our skies that we are being visited. If it is us, that means that there is a secondary track of technology that when our own pilots looked at it, said, oh my God.
And if that's the case, whose technology is it? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, they have started finding all this shit out since they upgraded their technology, their sensors sort of thing. Is that right?
So there are two things. So over the years, the pilots have been seeing them in general. Just if we're being honest. I mean, even Brits. I mean, there's a report where one of the British pilots for the RAF was sent out and was observing the craft, where he came out and he was giving his own testimony. But it didn't seem to take residence until the pilots in the US started talking about this stuff. They upgraded the technology, and in a weird way, you could be looking at it with your own eyes and can't see it. And yet it shows up on the technology. Now, part of this might be we make assumptions, and some of those assumptions are not right. We assume that if something is going from point A to point B, that it's doing so by pushing something out of the back of its engine. Well, that's not necessarily true in all cases of technology. No. And if there is a upgrade, let's say, for example, there's been a breakthrough in some level of physics, because one of the documents from the Freedom of Information Act that was released was all of the weird physics that the U.S. military had been studying: electromagnetic, electrophysics, invisibility, warp drive, portals, all this weird.
You start thinking, okay, how about an aircraft that can create a vacuum in front of it and move in a vacuum? Those sort of technologies, that's theoretically possible.
But gravitics, like assuming for the moment you're using gravity, like if you're using some level of gravity to get you from point A to point B, then what is taking place on the inside of the craft may not necessarily be the same thing that's taking place on the outside of the craft.
Yes.
Meaning, even though it's going from point A to point B at these fantastic speeds, from the observer on the inside, there's no inertia. Like
there's a physics thing that I remember from when I was taking my physics class of it.
Instead of using just propellant, you're using a quirk in physics in order to make that work. Like electrogravitics, like you're using electromagnetics in order to kind of create a gravitational effect. Now, what's his name in Congress have said, in order to, if what you're seeing is correct, there are all sorts of technological and scientific things that you need to explain to us. And it's getting into this conversation because the congressmen are kind of making this point like, there's all sorts of breakthroughs in technology that would need to be true for this. We need to understand what you're observing and how this works. Luis Elizondo comes out and says, we understand the physics. He says, we know how it works. Whether or not we can produce it is a secondary thing to whether or not our observations in regards to how the craft flies and how they work and the physics involved in it. He goes further and say there are multiple types of craft, and each of those craft have different functions. Like, Luis Elizondo is saying some wild shit. And this is the guy who literally was observing this stuff for the government. Now, the truth of it is, Luis Elizondo is a spook. He's an intelligence guy. That was his job. And Tom DeLonge has, for the most part, has a lot of spooks behind him on this, which makes me distrust Tom DeLonge on this. Yeah. Tom DeLonge believes in the bad alien theory, that there are bad aliens out there that are going to eat babies. When he got on Joe Rogan and Joe Rogan picked him apart, and there's some other interviews where Tom DeLonge gave where he gets into this bad alien stuff, and he stopped saying that. He stopped bringing that shit up because it sounds outright fucking absurd. It's like, yeah, the aliens try to have a nuclear war. Aliens try to have a nuclear war. All right, Tom, we need you to shut the fuck up and stop talking about this. Stop. But from this basic angle of, are we being visited, and this question of whether it's us or not, I think that's an awesomely fair conversation to have. And, this notion of the information that's hitting the press, the media, all this stuff, like making this topic legitimate. It's the weirdest thing to me that it was like, we are a ball hurling through space. Literally, that's what we are. Yeah. People go through their jobs and they go through their mundane life and all this other stuff. But most of that stuff, government money, the borders, none of that stuff is real. The reality of it is you're a ball hurling through space. You're a person. And we, with our limited technology, are sending stuff to the moon, we're sending probes out in space. But for whatever reason, it's this odd thing to believe that God created us in a petri dish and just had this, this thing, and you just see space out there. That space is not really out there. You have life that grow in volcanic pits. Real talk.
Yeah.
We're supposed to believe that life is only on this planet. Like, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. And then people would say, well, I'm not saying that something can't evolve somewhere else, but I'm just saying they can't get here. Why do you think that?
Why do you think that? Why are you only thinking in the same amount of dimensions as we know of? There could be other dimensions that you don't know of. There could be wormholes.
Even the technology. Why do you think the technology started and evolved in the same way that our technology started and evolved? There could have been different chemicals. There could have been different processes nearby that gave them different points of view in regards to how they moved along. In their
How many times have you seen this? Jamal, how many times have you seen this in the movie? Well, you see, normally, you see what you do is you fold space in on yourself and then you poke it through, and that's how you. How many times have you seen? Theoretically, it's like.
But you realize those movies and everything else, to some degree, has a purpose. Part of that purpose is to get people acclimated to this notion of UFOs. Like, imagine for the moment.
Yeah.
And I've heard people make this argument. It's like, look, the World War II generation, the generation that came out of World War I and World War II would have been capable of dealing with aliens at that point. I mean, after all, you've had, 50 million people like die in this horrific war.
Yeah.
And you add in aliens to this. Is it something that completely is, maybe, maybe not? I mean, you have certain religious beliefs. You have people who were pretty conservative in their outlook and everything else. And this would have been a complete upending on everything that this country and this world, by the way, was built on. Like technology, different. How people live, different. Do aliens believe in Jesus? Probably not. But the fact that somebody asked that question is somewhat problematic in and of itself. Are the aliens capitalists? These are questions that people ask, and these questions are nonsensical. They mean nothing. They're utterly absurd.
Listen, the most important question, are the aliens for or against Brexit?
Right. Do the aliens, are they okay with Brexit? Otherwise, I'm not going to be for those aliens, man. Fuck those aliens. It's fascinating that the way the public would talk about this. So I can get the two-step, and I get people would be freaked out if you had to kind of disclose that stuff. But the moment that you get the public acclimated, one alien movie after the next, the next, and then they come on and says, yeah, there's something we're being visited, and the public is like, okay.
It's strange you say acclimated, because my next question was literally, I've written down here, which Marvel superhero is going to save us? We keep getting. I have seen Express headline after Express. Express is a newspaper over here that still talk about Diana talking to them from beyond the grave, but they have been talking about alien invasion non-stop for the last 12 months. Non-stop, honestly, non-stop. All of a sudden they started talking about it, and they keep saying that there's going to be some sort of thing with Trump, etc. And then this comes out, and you saying acclimated, etc., and getting primed, and then Trump unleashes his Space Force, and yesterday, I am not kidding, he did his speech on it, and he said, this is the next place of battle that is inevitable, that is for certain, I think he said. Are we getting primed here for this? Are we getting primed for them to say, listen, the aliens are coming here, we can see them, we don't know, we need to stick some money in this military-industrial complex in space? Is it all about just arming America to the teeth, not just on this world, but above it as well and beyond? Because that's what it seems like to me. It seems like not just your country, but our country as well, has been hijacked by a national security state that is literally just taking us into an ever never-ending cycle of war, both on this planet and seemingly elsewhere in the solar system, if they can find the technology to do that. Do you agree, mate?
So, partially. So we spend, $700 billion, and we're not fighting a war? Like, to put it in context. Like, seriously, we're spending $700 trillion to hunt people down in caves, and there is no enemy, no real enemy per se. The Soviet Union doesn't exist, and yet NATO lumbers along looking for something to do. And we back it. At this point, it should just be an honest thing that this is kind of a world control thing, and this is kind of a world order that they kind of want to seek to control. I wouldn't be shocked if there was this notion of all right, now we need to spend money on aliens in space because there's something invading our skies and we don't know what it is.
But
Like, I
Jamal,
would
the
just
public would.
untie
Yeah, do you agree with me that they could spin it so the public would swallow it?
They could, well, yes, because the public is easily threatened. I mean, like they were able to go and say Obama, assault, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
Yeah.
There were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and with the media coming out with reports like this, the reports themselves can be earnest, and I accept that the reports may be earnest. But political actors, I don't trust. And there's some UFO guys out there who are thinking that, oh, we're going to reach the new stage of human evolution when aliens are disclosed. And I said, nonsense. Would you like to come over my channel to debate it? Because ultimately, we're talking about political actors. And I mean, for fuck's sake, we're talking about a Brexit where Jeremy Corbyn has literally done everything he could to tie the government in knots to prevent Boris Johnson from getting his potential for a Brexit. Like, this is cutthroat politics. The same thing happens in the United States. You have income inequality that is beyond anything we have ever seen in this country. And Donald Trump comes up and says, you know what we need more than anything else? We need a tax cut to go through. Like, so these are the guys who they're saying is going to bring forth this new UFO reality that is going to be for the best. Nonsense. There is nothing that has happened that makes me believe that these hacks that are in office in this country or any other is going to somehow go to the better angels of their nature when they are dealing with this issue. They're hacks. No, they're going to look for their own self-advantage, their own self-aggrandizement. That's what I believe. That's a cynical perspective. But tell me why that's not true. That's what I believe. So in the same way that you have fear-mongering on Medicare for all and fear-mongering on, Obamacare was going to have death camps and FEMA camps and all this other nonsense, I think you're going to have the same thing with that. That issue is easily primed to be scrutinized in a way that's purely and overtly political, because it's an X factor. It's not just something is taking place in some place in the world. It is something that is happening off world to us, and we have no idea what it is.
They can literally say what they want.
Right. All the information that you get is entirely given to you.
Yeah.
Which means that information is like you have to entirely believe that the people who are giving you the information, who've shown themselves that they lie flagrantly. Do you honestly believe that John Bolton has your best interest in heart if you were disclosing this issue?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Do you realize
Sure you
these
do.
guys were trying to take down Venezuela? Pompeo, who is a flagrant liar, who got on stage, said he lies for a living. He lies, cheats, and steals for a living. John Bolton, who is literally trying to attack the International Criminal Court because they themselves can find him for war crimes and what was taking place in Iraq and Afghanistan. And Abrams, who is a convicted liar for Congress and who was involved in death squads going back in Nicaragua and El Salvador, coming out, all three saying, we care for the best interests of the Venezuelan people, with a straight face. Am I honestly to believe that these people who are this shameless, and this is not just Trump, these guys, Obama greenlit that war for Yemen because he wanted to get the Iran deal through. These people are shameless, that they are going to look out for the best interests of the public on the issue, just because this issue is this extreme and out of our normal way of going about things. No, I don't believe that they're going to change their tenor. And I do believe that they could use this issue for political effect. Oh, there's something in our skies. We don't know what those things in our skies are. We need to spend more money on weapons in space in order to make sure that we're safe. Even if it's not, oh, we're being attacked. It doesn't have to be that. It can even be there's something in our skies that we don't know what it is. We need to spend more money to deal with the thing in our skies. I will tell you this. Part of the doctrine of U.S. security from the standpoint of the Air Force is weapons in space. It's this notion of having supremacy, because the moment that you have weapons in space, it doesn't need to be a nuclear weapon. You can have a platform that just floats above the atmosphere. And when you need to drop a munition on somebody, it can have a targeted satellite munition where it just drops from space and blows it up. And it can float all around space, and we can have complete control and dominance over space. I would guarantee you that that has been the doctrine, the strategy of the U.S. military. The technology just was never there in order to allow them to get to that particular point. Here's the catch. The moment that you put weapons in space, so Russia has put weapons in space, and China has put weapons in space, and all these other countries have to do the exact same thing. Whether they use this in an overt, oh my God, we're being attacked. And the problem with even fear-mongering on this point is that it can easily jump to that. Like it's a one step away from there's something in the skies, we don't know what it is. Oh my God, we're being attacked. that hysteria can work. Do not misunderstand me, especially when it's something that people don't know what it is. So I don't disagree with you in a sense where it's just this absolute disagreement. It is very possible that a shameless government that lies flagrantly, Donald Trump lies every time he opens his mouth, would use something like that for political effect if he thought he can get an ounce of political momentum out of it. I think this weirds Trump out, though, if I'm being honest. Like Clinton seemed to be on board for the alien stuff. I mean, she was caught with alien books. In WikiLeaks, she was trying to get Jimmy Kimmel to ask her about it, about UFOs. And she says, oh, no, it's not UFOs now, it's UAPs. This was a planned question that she was pushing, and her camp was pushing him to ask. And her camp was glowing when she answered it, meaning the assumption was that Clinton was going to win. And with the assumption being Clinton was going to win, all of this information gets put out all of a sudden with Clinton in office. And with all of this information hitting the press with Clinton in office, Clinton has political capital to say, well, I need to open the books now because look at all of these documents. I mean, look at the New York Times and Politico, and that guy's aliens. I got to look in the books. It gives her a political capital to do something that she said she was going to do and what John Podesta has wanted to do for the last 20 years. So I think what fucked up the plan was she lost.
Yeah.
She lost. That's a big mess. That's a big part. That's a big deal. The plan when you lose.
I'm not sad about that, by the way.
It's like, yeah, I don't believe in these aliens.
Not sad that she lost, by the way. Even though you got Trump, still not sad she lost.
Not sad in the least.
You brought up Venezuela there, and I'll leave on this point. You brought up Venezuela, and with all the bullshit that we heard about Venezuela from Pompeo and etc., our media just repeated those lies. Even though our media know their lies, they repeated them anyway. With the situation where we've got Space Force, or whatever the fuck Donald Trump's going to call it, that literally is in space. There's no way for our media to know whether that's bullshit or not. Now, when they know things are bullshit, they still just repeat them anyway. With regards to that next frontier, the final frontier,
you have to accept everything they tell you.
Exactly.
Anything that happens. Understand how dangerous this is. Like, one of my episodes of Star Trek that I like, I'm a Star Trek person.
Me too, mate.
I got all the
next, only the next generation, no, not the first, just the TNG one, just the Jean-Luc Picard.
I like all of them. Some less than others. Like, I hated Discovery. I didn't like Discovery. Discovery sucked. There were scenes or parts of Discovery that were awesome. The scene with Pike, Captain Pike, because Pike was the one that ended up like really fucked up in the original series. And so when they have Pike in Discovery, it was this way of trying to create a continuity between the two. And there's a scene that has to be probably one of the best scenes in Discovery, where Discovery is just heavy-handed on the identitarian stuff, on the pro-science stuff, even though Star Trek in and of itself was just a science show. You didn't need to go further in that. It was like they just wanted to ding religion. They go too far. That's all. It's so heavy-handed. But there's a scene in it where Pike he has to go and get a crystal because they need to get the information out. It is what it is. And Pike goes to Cronus. He goes to the Klingon home territory. And Pike is told to go away. You're not going to get this crystal. We've broken other men before who's tried to get this particular device and all this other stuff. But Pike is like, I'm a Starfleet officer. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to get this crystal. That's my job. I'm going to do this. I got to do this. There's no other option in this process. And the Klingon says, fine. And they take him to this time crystal where is like flickering back and forth in time. And Pike has to get this crystal because if he doesn't, Discovery is going to get handed over to the galaxy is going to be fucked up. And Pike gets close to the crystal. He goes to grab it and he sees his future. He sees himself in this explosion and he sees himself trying to rescue these people while allowing himself to be utterly destroyed in this explosion. Skin melts off his face. He's all fucked up. And he sees himself in this wheelchair where he can't talk, can't move his arms. And a little button comes up with yes or no for a little light. And Pike falls back, broken. It breaks him as a man. Like he's like, oh God, no. And he steadies himself and he's like, I'm a Starfleet officer. I'm a Starfleet officer. This is what I have to do. This is what I have to do. And based on this notion of, as a man, too strong, too weak to handle this, but as an officer of Starfleet, this is what I must do. Even if this means that this is the future that I am going to have to take on by virtue of taking this crystal. God damn it. I'm Captain Pike. I got to do it. And he breaks the crystal off, ensuring that that will be his fate. That is one of the best scenes. That is one of the best scenes. Much in Discovery, though, it's not that badass, in regards to the show. But the original series, that's a scene in Enterprise, the prequel, the shitty prequel that came out with Captain Archer, the guy from Quantum Leap.
Yes, I remember it. Yes, yeah. Scott Bakula.
It took that show a while for me to grow in me, but these are not evolved humans. These humans are kind of more like us. They're greedy, petty. Some of them are racist and bigoted, that type of stuff. They're more like us. It's a conduit between where we are and where they are. And I remember there was this episode where I think it was like the third episode or second episode where there's only one ship. They have one ship. That's it. Just one ship in space. It's a warp drive 4, like something like that. The ship barely has weapons. And they go pick a fight with this other alien species. And I'm at the sea like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing this? You're going to get our planet nuked. Like he's like, we must stand on our principles and our ideals. And if that means we're going to come into contest with this alien species that we don't know, that we've never come across before, that we've never met, that we have no idea their capabilities, and God damn it, that's what we're going to do. Earth is one ship. They're entirely reliant on Vulcans said that you are not prepared to be out in space. And I said, yeah, the Vulcans are right. The humans are not prepared to be in space. And this is a show that I love. And I'm looking at the show like, he's going to get our planet nuked. Because you have one ship. You are incapable of defending yourself. And your ideals and all this stuff are great, but there's a reality that you have to deal with that you will get your planet nuked. I say this to say, I think this is the same way of the human beings on this planet now. They are petty, they are greedy, and they do things that are not in the best interest of the whole, purely in the best interest of the individuals. And us in space, where they are just relaying us information where we don't necessarily know what is taking place. And that's not even an alien species or something like that. Just this notion of us in our engagement with other countries. India attacked us. Do we know that? Russia shot down our missile. Do we know that? Our satellite was taken. Do we know that? We don't know any of that stuff. All of that stuff is literally going to be stenographers telling you what took place in space. Yes, you're right. It is a final frontier where we don't necessarily know what is going on. And that makes it that much more dubious in regards to, or dangerous, I should say, in regards to the way we go about, reporting media and whatnot. We're in the dark.
Well, if Donald Trump is looking for, 2 journalists to go up on the first trip to space, on the Space Force missions, I'm sure you and I would be happy to volunteer. Jamal Thomas, please tell everybody watching where we can find you, mate.
You can find me on Twitter at the Prague Soapbox or on my channel at Jamal Thomas on YouTube.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you as always. 2.5 hours have just absolutely flown by as always, mate. I really appreciate you. I appreciate everything you're doing. Please subscribe to Jamal. He's great, and we need more people like him. And if we get more people like Jamal standing up and telling people the truth, you know what? The fourth estate and humanity might just have a chance. Jamal, thanks very much, mate.
Thanks, man.
Peace, everyone.